The key went in halfway and stopped. Evelyn Mercer pulled it out, wiped the rain from her fingers, and tried again. She had unlocked that blue farmhouse door in the dark with a fever, carrying groceries, carrying pies, carrying Frank when his legs stopped obeying him. She had never once needed to look at the key. Behind her, a casserole slid across the back seat of her car and struck the door with a soft, accusing thump. "Don't start," she told it. She turned the key over. Nothing. Then the porch light came on, though it was barely 4 in the afternoon, and Natalie opened Evelyn's door from the inside. Her daughter wore white painter's pants, Frank's old flannel shirt, and the strained smile of someone caught halfway through a surprise. "You're early. I live here. I know, Mom. I meant you're earlier than I expected." Natalie glanced toward the road, where Mercer Family Farm hung above the gate in Frank's black lettering. Within a week, that sign would be lying face down in the equipment barn, and Natalie would be standing beneath its replacement, asking how her mother could do such a thing. But for now, Evelyn only held up her useless key. Natalie's smile disappeared. "I meant to call you about that." Rain ticked against the porch roof. Evelyn waited because 69 years had taught her that silence could make a person finish a sentence she might otherwise improve. "We had to change the locks," Natalie said, "for the contractors." "What contractors?" "The ones I told you about. You told me the upstairs bathroom needed new grout. It does. And there are some other things we decided to go ahead and tackle while you were with Aunt Mary Ann." "We?" Natalie looked over her shoulder. A man Evelyn had never seen crossed the front hall carrying the brass light fixture that had hung there since 1986. It swung from one hand like a dead bird. "Careful with that," Evelyn called. He stopped. "Yes, ma'am. Put it somewhere soft." Natalie stepped onto the porch and pulled the door nearly shut behind her. "His name is Curtis. He's helping with the electrical." "The electrical that worked Thursday?" "It was old." "So am I." "Did you replace me while you were at it?" "Mom." Natalie had a particular way of saying that word when she wanted Evelyn to feel childish. Frank used to say Evie in much the same tone when she objected to him lending equipment nobody returned. Evelyn went back to the car and opened the rear door. "Take the green dish, not the blue one. The blue one leaks. Let me get Curtis." "Curtis is holding my light fixture." She carried the blue casserole herself and gave Natalie the green one. The rain had already darkened Evelyn's gray hair and found the collar of her coat. Her left knee complained on the porch step. 4 days of sleeping on Mary Ann's pull-out couch had done it no favors. Natalie opened the door using a bright new key. Inside, the front hall smelled of cut wood, primer, and the cinnamon candle Natalie lit whenever she wanted a room to seem friendlier than it was. The braided runner had been rolled against the wall. Frank's boots were gone from beside the coat closet. Evelyn had kept them there through spring, summer, and half of autumn, though they still held dried red mud from the orchard. Where are his boots? In storage. What storage? The good storage, not the damp basement. Evelyn set down the casserole. "Natalie. I made the cottage beautiful." The sentence was so far from anything Evelyn had asked that for a moment she thought she had missed part of the conversation. Natalie reached into her pocket and produced another new key. This one had a paper tag tied to it with kitchen string. "Cottage," Natalie had printed in neat block letters. "I was going to take you down there first," she said. "I wanted you to see it all finished." "Why would I want to see the cottage?" "Because it's yours." Evelyn looked at the key without taking it. The cottage stood beyond the equipment barn, where the ground dipped and stayed muddy after rain. Frank's father had built it for seasonal workers. In recent years, Evelyn had used it for empty canning jars, Christmas decorations, and relatives she loved best at a distance. "I have a house," she said. "You have a whole house, Mom. 3 bedrooms upstairs that you don't use, stairs you shouldn't be climbing, a bathtub you can barely get out of. I get out of it every morning. You fell in August." "I sat down unexpectedly. You bruised your hip. That was the tub's fault. It's too close to the toilet." Natalie pushed damp hair from her forehead. "Can you please just look before you decide to hate it?" "I don't hate the cottage. You haven't seen it. I don't hate Maine either. I don't want to wake up there tomorrow." Curtis appeared at the end of the hall. "Nat, where do you want this?" He was still holding the fixture. "Dining room table," Evelyn said. Natalie said, "Garage." Curtis looked between them. "Somewhere soft," Evelyn told him. He retreated without choosing a direction. Natalie closed her eyes briefly. "This is what I was trying to avoid." "What?" This. You turning every practical conversation into a standoff. Evelyn stared at her daughter's white pants. There was blue paint at one knee, almost the exact color of the front door. Natalie had always been able to work. She was not one of those people who arrived at a project with a travel mug and suggestions. Since coming home from Richmond, she had scrubbed mildew from the packing shed walls, hung curtains, designed a website, and charmed 3 brides who had driven up looking doubtful and left clutching deposit receipts. She had also begun saying "we" when she meant "I." "Where are my clothes?" Evelyn asked. "In the cottage. My medicine, bathroom cabinet, my sewing basket, beside the chair." "Frank?" Natalie's face softened, relieved to be asked something she could answer correctly. "On the bookcase. I put him next to that picture from your 30th anniversary." Evelyn looked toward the staircase. "You moved your father's ashes?" "I was careful. Into the cottage. It isn't a shed anymore. There's new flooring, a walk-in shower, fresh paint. I got you one of those kettles that shuts itself off. I have never once burned up a kettle. I know. It's just safer." There was that word. Safer. It had started appearing around Evelyn like orange fencing around a hole. Safer shoes, safer steps, safer if Natalie handled the farm stand deposits, safer if Evelyn stopped driving after dark. Every suggestion was reasonable by itself. Put together, they formed a life with no doors in it. Natalie picked up the tagged key and pressed it into her hand. "Come see." The cottage was warm when they entered. Too warm. Natalie had set the thermostat to 74, as though widowhood came with poor circulation. The walls were pale yellow. A blue sofa sat under the front window, and a knitted throw Evelyn did not own had been arranged over one arm. Her clothes filled the narrow bedroom closet. Her toothbrush stood in a new cup. Frank's ashes rested on the bookcase in their plain walnut box, beside a framed photograph of him laughing into the wind on the Chesapeake ferry. Evelyn walked through each room without speaking. Natalie followed, pointing out improvements. Louise fixed the porch rail. The washer and dryer are stacked, so you don't have to bend as much. I put non-slip backing under every rug. Where are my red mixing bowls? In the farmhouse kitchen. Why? The cottage cabinets are smaller. So I live down here, but my bowls live up there? You can use them whenever you want. With which key? Natalie stopped. Evelyn opened the refrigerator. Milk, eggs, butter, a plastic container of sliced turkey, 4 yogurt cups, and a bottle of white wine. Natalie had stocked it like a rental. "Is the farmhouse a rental now?" Evelyn asked. "Not exactly." "What is it exactly?" Natalie sat on the arm of the sofa. For the first time since Evelyn arrived, she looked nervous rather than annoyed. "The venue needs lodging. We've lost 2 bookings because people want somewhere for the bridal party to get ready and stay overnight. The farmhouse is perfect. With the bathroom work and some updates, we can charge enough to cover everything. Everything being, what? Repairs, taxes, the orchard, your expenses. My expenses have been covered since before you learned long division." "Barely." Evelyn shut the refrigerator. "You moved me out of my house so strangers could sleep in it. I moved you into a home that works better for you. You changed the locks, because keys are floating all over the county. Dad gave them to everybody. Your father gave away socket wrenches. He guarded keys. Mom, you said you wanted me to make the venue successful. I did. You said this would all be mine one day." The rain hit the cottage windows harder, 1,000 small fingernails. There it was. Not cruelty exactly. Something more bewildering. Natalie looked frightened. She had risked money she did not have on the packing shed. Her marriage had ended with less left over than she admitted. She had returned to the farm, carrying fabric samples, 3 good dresses, and the brittle confidence of a person who could not bear to fail where everyone knew her name. Evelyn had made promises out of love, guilt, and habit. Apparently, Natalie had built walls on top of them. "One day," Evelyn said, "not Thursday." Natalie stood. "Why are you making this ugly? I came home and my key didn't work. I was trying to take something off your shoulders. You took the roof too. I knew you wouldn't agree if I asked." Evelyn looked at her then. Natalie seemed to hear her own words a second too late. Her mouth opened, but whatever explanation came next could not get past them. Evelyn picked up the leaking casserole. "Where are you going?" "To eat Mary Ann's chicken. I've been smelling it since Staunton. Can we not do this tonight?" "You're tired." "I am. That's all I'm saying." "No, it isn't." Evelyn spent the evening at the cottage's little table with a bath towel folded under the blue dish. The chicken was dry, but Marianne had put enough cheese on top to insulate a garage. Evelyn ate 2 helpings while darkness covered the orchard. At 9, she tried to read. At 10, she moved Frank's ashes from the bookcase to the table. At 11, a truck left the packing shed, its headlights sliding across the bedroom ceiling. She lay awake listening to the refrigerator hum 6 feet from her head. Frank had been dead 14 months. Some nights that fact still arrived fresh, as if someone had knocked to deliver it. She missed the weight of his shoulder beside hers. She missed his terrible habit of clearing his throat before saying something he knew she would dislike. She even missed being angry at him, because anger had once guaranteed there would be another person in the room. Near midnight, she remembered the first winter they owned the farm. They had burned broken orchard crates because they could not afford enough heating oil. She had stood at the stove in 2 sweaters making apple butter, while Frank slept in a chair after working 19 hours. The Mercers called the place Frank's farm. Her own mother called it Evelyn's beautiful mistake. At 6:30, Evelyn dressed, carried Frank back to the farmhouse, and knocked on the blue door. Natalie answered in pajamas. "I need my house key," Evelyn said. "We discussed this. You discussed it." I listened. "I have contractors coming at 8. Then you better put on pants." Natalie folded her arms. "I'm not giving you a key while work is happening. It's a liability. To whom? Everybody. Try again? Mom? No." Evelyn nodded once. "All right." Natalie's expression loosened, mistaking the end of an argument for surrender. Evelyn walked to her car. She placed Frank's ashes carefully on the passenger seat and called Ray Cobb, the locksmith who had installed the deadbolt after a string of barn thefts in 2009. Then she looked through the windshield at the old sign over the road. Her second call was to a sign painter in Waynesboro. "This is Evelyn Mercer," she said. "You still do outdoor lettering?" The man said he did. "Good. How soon can you make me a farm gate sign?" "Depends what you want it to say," the man said. Evelyn watched the farmhouse windows. Natalie had disappeared from the doorway, though a curtain moved in the upstairs front room. Avery Farm. The name sounded strange and level in her mouth. "Spell Avery for me. Avery. And you want Mercer anywhere on it?" "No." A pause came down the line. Evelyn could hear paper moving and a radio playing somewhere behind him. "How big is the opening?" 14 feet, post to post. Current board is 12. Current board wood? Pine. It's held up 37 years. That doesn't mean it was the right wood. It was free. That explains why it was the right wood. She almost smiled. The sign painter introduced himself as Warren Pike and asked her to text him a photograph of the gate. Evelyn told him her telephone still took photographs, only when it was in the mood. "I can come measure this afternoon," he said. "Got a delivery out your way." "Fine. You want just Avery Farm?" She looked across the wet fields. Beyond the house, the first rows of apple trees climbed the slope in dark, orderly lines. She had spent so long seeing Frank's name above them that Avery looked imaginary, letters drawn in the air. Put orchard, kitchen, and gathering table underneath. That's a lot of words. So is family farm. Half the people who worked this place were never treated like family. Another pause. "What color? Cream board, green lettering? That's not what you have now." "No." "All right, Mrs. Mercer." "Avery," she said, then felt foolish. "The sign is Avery. I'm still Mercer." "For now," Warren said mildly. Before she could decide whether that was a joke, he told her he would arrive after 2. Ray Cobb's locksmith van came through the gate at 7:28. Ray had grown heavier since Evelyn last saw him, though his gray mustache remained narrow and severe, as if it disapproved of the rest of his face. He parked behind her car and climbed out carrying a red metal case. "Morning, Evie. Somebody break in? Somebody lock me out." He looked at the house, then at the cottage. "You lose a key?" "No." Natalie came down the porch steps with her coat pulled over her pajamas. "Mr. Cobb, we don't need you." Ray stopped beside the van. His gaze traveled from Natalie to Evelyn and back again. "I'm experiencing mixed signals. My mother is upset because I changed the locks," Natalie said. "You left out the part where you moved me. I moved her into the renovated cottage for her safety." Ray looked toward the cottage, where one lamp still glowed in the front window. "Did she ask you to?" "That's not the point." "It has a way of becoming the point," Evelyn said. Natalie shoved her hands into her coat pockets. The new locks are part of the renovation budget. I paid for them. Then I'll reimburse you. With what? Evelyn heard the question land. So did Natalie. Ray became deeply interested in the latches on his red case. With a check, Evelyn said. I didn't mean you did. I meant you're already stretched thin. This is exactly why I'm trying to create reliable income, by renting my bedroom, by using wasted space. The trouble with calling a room wasted is that sometimes there's still a person in it. A white pickup came through the gate. Curtis parked near the porch, took one look at the three of them, and remained behind his steering wheel. Ray cleared his throat. Evie, you're asking me to change every exterior cylinder? Front, back, mudroom. Natalie said, You cannot be serious. Can you do it? Ray nodded. Need to know who gets keys. I do. Anyone else? Not this morning. Natalie walked up to Evelyn until they stood close enough for Evelyn to see the pillow crease on her cheek. You're humiliating me in front of people I hired. Then go put on pants. For a second, Natalie looked as if she might laugh. It was the worst possible kindness. Her mouth twitched, and then anger closed over it. I have a business to run. You have the packing shed? The farmhouse is part of the package. It never was. We discussed lodging 6 weeks ago. You said some couples had asked about it. I said I didn't want strangers sleeping in the house. You said, We'll see. That was me trying to end the conversation politely. How was I supposed to know that? You grew up with me. Yes, Natalie said. I did. The words were quiet and sharp. Evelyn could have answered them a dozen ways, all of them damaging. She turned to Ray instead. Go ahead. Ray carried his case up the steps. Natalie did not move until he had to say, Excuse me, Nat, in the tone used for people blocking grocery aisles. Then she stepped aside. Curtis finally got out of his truck. Morning, he called, with the false cheer of a man approaching a loose dog. What work are you doing today? Evelyn asked. Switches, mostly. Dining room outlet. Nat said some of the old ones spark. One does, left of the sideboard. That'll be the first one. No chandeliers come down without asking me. Curtis rubbed the back of his neck. About yesterday's fixture. Where did you put it? On a moving blanket in the garage. Then we remain friends. He glanced at Natalie for permission to smile. She was already walking toward the house. Evelyn retrieved Frank's ashes from her passenger seat. Ray paused with the front lock half removed when she came up behind him. You want a hand with that? He asked. I've got him. It was the phrase she had used throughout Frank's illness, when he fell beside the bathtub, when he could no longer button his shirts, when Natalie arrived on Friday nights with exhaustion under her eyes and asked what needed doing. I've got him. Sometimes it had meant thank you. Sometimes it had meant don't look too closely. Sometimes it had meant if I let go, I won't know what to pick up afterward. Inside, Evelyn set the walnut box on the dining room sideboard. The house looked familiar, from waist-height down, and strangely naked above it. Pictures had been removed from the walls. Frank's father in his army uniform was gone. So was the oval mirror from the stair landing, and the little watercolor of the orchard Evelyn had bought at a church sale. Blue painter's tape marked defects Natalie had apparently discovered after living with them for 38 years. Curtis began opening his toolboxes near the sparking outlet. Where are the pictures? Evelyn asked. Natalie stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee. She had changed into jeans and a black sweater, but had not brushed her hair, wrapped in the guest room. My room? The main bedroom. It was the main bedroom yesterday, too. I was trying to answer your question. You renamed all the rooms? Natalie set the coffee down too hard. Do you want a cup? Yes. That answer seemed to disarm her. She took out a second mug. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table. Her red mixing bowls were stacked on the counter, exactly where they belonged. Natalie added milk to Evelyn's coffee without asking, got the amount right, and placed it in front of her. For a minute, they listened to Ray working at the front door. I didn't throw you out, Natalie said. My key stopped working. I made you a better place. You made me a place where I would be out of your way. That isn't fair. Fair would have been asking. Natalie pulled out the opposite chair but did not sit. And if I had, I would have said no. That's why I didn't. Evelyn lifted the mug, though the coffee was too hot. You keep saying that as if it helps. I had 4 days. The flooring crew had an opening. Curtis could start the electrical. The new locks came with the security package. Everything lined up for once, except me. You were supposed to come home tomorrow. And then what? You'd put flowers in the cottage and wait for me to thank you? I did put flowers in the cottage. I saw them. They looked nervous. Natalie sat down to spite herself. Her coffee remained on the counter. You always do that, she said. Do what? Make a joke, and then nobody gets to be angry because you're funny. People have been angry at me for years, not Dad. Evelyn looked into her coffee. Dad could sulk for 3 days because you changed the supper time, Natalie continued, but you'd make biscuits and act like that meant the fight was over. You let him believe every good thing here was his idea. I didn't let him. You did. You still do. From the hall came the scrape of metal, then Ray muttering to himself. Evelyn set down the mug. Your father has been dead 14 months. This morning is not his fault. No, it's mine. I understand. You say that as if I want you punished. What do you want? My clothes back in my closet, my medicine in my bathroom, my boots by the door. Your business kept in the part of the farm we agreed it could use. And when the venue can't cover its loans, you borrowed the money for this farm, for your business. That distinction is easy for you because you already have something. Evelyn leaned back. Natalie's face had gone pale with anger. Beneath it was the same fear Evelyn had heard when she said everything would someday be hers. What do you think I have? Evelyn asked. Natalie looked around the kitchen. All of this. The answer was so simple that Evelyn could not tell whether it was childish or true. Ray appeared in the doorway holding 3 bright keys on a ring. Front and mudroom are done. Back's next. Evelyn took the ring. The keys were light and sharp against her palm. Natalie stood. Congratulations. She walked out through the mudroom before Ray could tell her that lock was already changed. The door shut behind her. A moment later, her car started and threw gravel as she drove toward the gate. Luis Ortega's truck slowed to let her pass. He lifted one hand, but Natalie did not seem to see him. Luis parked near the barn and came into the kitchen carrying a paper sack spotted with grease. He was 61, compact and straight-backed, with eyebrows that gave every expression a skeptical roof. He placed the sack on the table. My wife made too many empanadas, he said. Celia has never made too many of anything. She made more than she wishes to admit. He looked at Ray, the loose locks, Curtis kneeling beside the sideboard, and the mug Natalie had left untouched. Regular Thursday? He asked. It's Friday, Evelyn said. Worse than I thought. Ray laughed into his mustache. Luis took an empanada from the sack. You still want me in the North Rose? Please, check the wine saps for canker. I saw 2 bad limbs Tuesday. You were in Staunton Tuesday. I saw them Monday. You told me Thursday. I remembered better in Staunton. He nodded toward the gate, visible through the kitchen window. That board's leaning again. I know. I can brace it. Don't bother. Luis bit into the empanada and waited. A man's coming to measure for a new sign, Evelyn said. What was wrong with the old name? Nothing, if your name is Mercer. He chewed slowly. Frank will object. Frank objects to everything now by being unavailable. Luis lowered his eyes, but not before she saw the smile. At 2:15, Warren Pike arrived in a green van with gold letters on the side. He was tall, bald, and younger than his radio voice. Evelyn met him at the gate with a measuring tape she did not need. They were discussing letter height when Natalie's car returned. She parked in the drive and approached them carefully. Who is this? Warren Pike, Warren said. Signs and exterior lettering. Natalie looked up at the Mercer board. Are you fixing it? No, Evelyn said. Warren unfolded his sketch. Natalie read the large penciled words in the center. Avery Farm. Her eyes moved to Evelyn's face. What is that? My mother's name. I know whose name it is. Then why did you ask? Natalie's voice dropped. You're taking Dad's name off the farm? Evelyn looked up at Frank's black letters, weather softened but still legible against the gray sky. I'm taking it off the gate, she said. That is where everybody sees it, Natalie said. Yes, people drive through that gate believing this is Mercer Farm. They won't have to believe it much longer. They can read. Warren Pike folded the sketch halfway, then opened it again when neither woman gave him permission to disappear. Natalie turned to him. Could you give us a minute? I can measure the west post. He walked 8 feet away and became fascinated by the west post. Natalie lowered her voice. You called a sign painter before you even knew what the new locks would cost. Ray will send a bill. That isn't what I mean. I know. This is punishment. Evelyn looked at the existing board. Frank had painted those letters himself on two sawhorses behind the barn. He had come into the kitchen with black paint on his chin and told her the new sign would make them look established. She had teased him because his first F looked like a P. He repainted the whole word rather than admit it. Partly, she said. Natalie blinked. You want me to lie? I want you not to make a permanent decision because we had one fight. You changed the locks on my home. I was wrong not to ask. That's not an apology. I'm trying to get there, but you keep moving the ground. Evelyn could hear Warren's measuring tape snapping open and shut. Natalie pointed toward the board. Dad's parents bought this land. Dad worked it his entire life. You can't just remove him. I am not digging him up. That's a horrible thing to say. Then stop talking as if a painted board is your father. It means something. It does. Avery has nothing to do with this place. My father's inheritance paid the taxes the year the cannery closed. Granddad Avery left you, what, $6,000? $6,418. I remember because it was all he had, and we used every dime. Natalie's mouth tightened. That still doesn't make it Avery Farm. No, I do. Warren moved to the east post. The rain had ended, leaving beads of water along the bottom of the Mercer board. One gathered at the M and dropped. Natalie looked toward the farmhouse. The blue door was visible from the gate, brighter now, where Curtis had painted around the new lock. What am I supposed to call the venue? She asked. Whatever you like, provided you don't sell what isn't included. It's called Mercer Farm Weddings. It's on the website, the signs, the contracts, every listing. The packing shed can be Mercer. So Dad gets a shed. Frank gets every tree he planted, every ditch he dug, every story people tell about him. He gets your face every time you're annoyed. I don't have the power to remove him, Natalie. You're trying. Evelyn let the words pass without catching them. She had learned during Frank's last months that not every accusation needed a defense. Pain through things. Sometimes the kindest choice was simply not to throw them back. Warren returned with the tape clipped to his belt. I can reuse the iron brackets. They're sound. Board will take about 3 weeks if the weather cooperates. How much? Evelyn asked. He named a figure high enough to make her straighten. Natalie gave a short laugh. Well, that's practical. I didn't say I wanted practical lettering. Mom, the North Tractor needs tires. It needed tires before you bought 6 crystal chandeliers. They're acrylic. Then you paid too much. Warren coughed into his fist. Evelyn asked whether he needed a deposit. He did. She wrote the check against the hood of his van, pressing hard because the pen skipped. When she handed it over, Natalie was staring at her signature. Evelyn Mercer. Interesting, Natalie said. I'm changing the gate, not my driver's license. Why stop there? Because I'm very fond of my monogram bath towels. Warren put the check in his shirt pocket. I'll bring a color board by Monday. He shook Evelyn's hand, nodded to Natalie, and drove away with the caution of a man transporting explosives. Natalie stayed at the gate. You enjoyed that, she said. Not as much as you think. You made me look ridiculous. Warren doesn't know you. He knows I'm the daughter who locked her mother out. You told him that yourself. Natalie folded her arms. I've got a tasting tomorrow at 3. What does that have to do with the sign? 6 people. Kay's bringing the food. They're expecting to use the farmhouse kitchen. Evelyn studied her daughter's face. Were you planning to tell me? I was planning for you to be in the cottage. Did you rent them the kitchen? It's a tasting, not an event. Did you tell them they could use it? Yes. Then they can use it tomorrow. Natalie's suspicion arrived before her relief. Really? The promise was already made. After tomorrow, you ask. You'll be there? It's my kitchen. That might be awkward. It has survived awkwardness before. Your father once fired a man in there while I was canning peaches. Could you not tell that story tomorrow? I'll save it for the wedding. Natalie's shoulders dropped an inch. For a moment, she looked tired enough that Evelyn wanted to touch her hair. Then she said, I still need a house key. No. How am I supposed to run a tasting without access? Come through the door while I'm home. I can't arrange my business around whether you happen to be home. Now you understand the cottage. Natalie flinched. Evelyn regretted the accuracy of it, but not enough to take it back. She walked toward the equipment barn. Natalie followed at a distance, their shoes making different sounds on the wet gravel. Luis was coming out of the north rows when Evelyn reached him. He carried a pruning saw and a strip of bark in one gloved hand. Bad? She asked. 1 wine sap. Maybe 2. I cut below what I could see. Mark them, and we'll check next week. He looked past her toward Natalie. Sign man finished? He measured. What name? Natalie answered before Evelyn could. Avery Farm. Louis shifted the bark to his other hand. That your people? My mother's family, Evelyn said. I met your mother once. You did not. At Frank's funeral. That was my sister Mary Ann. Louise considered. She seemed old enough. Evelyn laughed before she could help it. Behind her, Natalie made a sound that might have been the beginning of one, but when Evelyn turned, her daughter was looking toward the cottage. My things need to come back, Evelyn said. Louise nodded. I'll get the truck. You've already done a day. Still have 30 minutes. It'll take longer. Then tell me which job waits Monday. Evelyn opened her mouth. He was not being insolent. That made it worse. Louise had worked beside Frank for 26 years, and Evelyn had asked him for 100 small favors as if favor were simply another crop the farm produced. The lower fence can wait, she said. And put the extra time down. I always put the time down. You know what I mean? I do. Natalie watched this exchange without comment. They used the old flatbed pickup for the move. The cottage was only a few hundred yards from the house, but Evelyn's clothes filled 4 plastic bins, and her shoes filled another because widowhood had not cured her of liking shoes she had nowhere to wear. Natalie carried the first bin out before anyone asked. Inside the cottage bedroom, Evelyn found her blouses grouped by color. Her winter sweaters had cedar blocks between them. The blue dress she had worn to Frank's funeral hung inside a garment bag instead of being folded into a drawer. You did this? She asked. Natalie kept her attention on the bin. I wasn't going to throw everything in trash bags. I didn't say you were. You looked as if you expected it. Evelyn ran her fingers over the garment bag zipper. Natalie had packed carefully. The medicine cabinet was organized by time of day. The shower had a teak stool and a new handheld nozzle. Even Evelyn's old bedroom slippers had been washed. It would have been easier if the cottage were cruel. Louise came through the door carrying 2 empty bins. Where's the sewing stuff? Front room, Natalie said. You know better than I do. I moved it. Louise looked at Evelyn, then decided the wall deserved his attention. They worked without much conversation. The cottage gradually returned to something between guest house and storage building. Natalie carried Frank's photograph against her chest. Evelyn carried his ashes. When they reached the farmhouse, Curtis had left for lunch. Ray was gone, leaving the old lock cylinders lined up neatly on newspaper by the door. 3 new keys remained on the kitchen table. Natalie set down the photograph and looked at them. You could give me one, she said. I could. I'm not going to move you again. That is a low bar for trust. What do I have to do? I don't know yet. Natalie stared at her. That's convenient. It's honest. We have 2 weddings booked with farmhouse lodging. Evelyn stopped midway through unwrapping the photograph. How many? 2. 1 in May and 1 in June. You took deposits? Yes. For my house? For the package. The package includes my house. It includes 2 nights of lodging. Where did you think I would sleep? The cottage? The words sat between them, plain and terrible. Louise came in carrying the sewing basket and set it beside Evelyn's chair. I'm going back to the trees, he said. You're done for today. Trees don't know. I do. He looked at Natalie, then at the keys. Write down the hours, he told Evelyn, and left. Natalie picked up one of the new keys. Evelyn held out her hand. After a moment, Natalie placed it in her palm. I can offer the couples the cottage, Natalie said. But that isn't what they booked. Then return the lodging money. I spent part of the deposits on the bathrooms. The upstairs bathroom and supplies, marketing, the chandeliers, acrylic chandeliers. Can you please stop saying that? Evelyn closed her fingers around the key. You had no right to take money from my home. You told me to make this work. I told you to use the packing shed. I'm trying to build something that lasts. So am I. Natalie looked toward the window. From the kitchen, the gate was partly hidden by the maple tree, but the word Mercer showed through the bare branches. You get to rewrite the whole place, she said. I change 1 lock and suddenly I'm a thief. You change 3 locks. Fine, 3. And you didn't steal the house. Evelyn set the key ring on the table. You decided I was finished with it. Natalie's jaw trembled once. She picked up her coat. Kay will be here at 1 tomorrow to prep. I'll be here. Please don't make a scene. I was going to make coffee. You know what I mean. Natalie went to the mudroom door, then turned back. The venue brochures call it Mercer Farm, she said. I'm not throwing them away. I didn't ask you to. and I'm not changing the website until I know what this is. Evelyn glanced at the 3 new keys. It's Friday, she said. That's all I know. Natalie left. Evelyn waited until her car had gone through the gate before carrying Frank upstairs. In the bedroom, the walls were bare, but the dents where their pictures had hung remained. She set his ashes on the dresser, beneath the clean rectangle that had once held their wedding portrait. Then she began unwrapping the house Natalie had packed away. The wedding portrait went back last. Evelyn stood on the staircase Saturday morning with a hammer between her teeth, trying to line the wire with the old nail. Frank stared out from the photograph in a brown suit he had hated. She wore a hat with netting over one eye and looked so young that she seemed like somebody Evelyn ought to warn. The nail bent. Of course, she muttered around the hammer. She drove in a new one, hung the frame, and stepped down 2 stairs to judge it. A little crooked. Frank had been a little crooked too. She left both as they were. At 12:53, someone knocked at the mudroom door. Natalie stood outside with 2 canvas bags over one shoulder and a cardboard box balanced on her hip. For half a second, mother and daughter simply looked at each other through the glass. Evelyn unlocked the door. You're early. Kay's coming at 1. That gives you 7 minutes to put on pants. Natalie looked down at her jeans. Are we going to keep doing that? Not if you stop arriving in pajamas. Evelyn stepped aside. Natalie entered without thanking her, then caught herself and said, "Thanks," with such deliberate politeness that it sounded like a complaint. She carried the box into the kitchen. Inside were linen napkins, 6 stemless wine glasses, candles in little brass holders, and printed menus tied with green ribbon. "Those are pretty," Evelyn said. "I made them last night." "Your printer's still streaking?" "I cleaned the heads." Frank had never understood that phrase. He said anything with heads should not sit next to the telephone. Evelyn nearly told Natalie, then decided not every memory needed to be placed between them, like a peace offering. A second knock came at 1 exactly. Kay Whitcomb filled the doorway with 2 silver catering pans, a purse the size of a saddlebag, and a pair of red glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She was 57, broad-shouldered, and wore her white blonde hair in a knot, secured with what appeared to be a chopstick. "Open the lower oven," she said by way of greeting. "My pork is losing faith." Evelyn opened it. Kay slid in the pans, straightened, and sniffed the room. Paint. "Dining room outlets," Evelyn said. Divorce smelled the same way. Paint and somebody lying about square footage. Natalie took Kay's purse before it knocked a candle to the floor. "You found the place okay?" "I have catered here 11 times. I meant with the rain damage on Route 11. I drove around it." Kay looked at Evelyn. Her gaze moved over the restored pictures, the new mudroom lock, and the ring of keys beside the telephone. "So," she said. "So," Evelyn answered. Natalie began arranging menus on the kitchen table. "We're keeping today easy. Drinks and starters here, then we'll move to the packing shed for the main tasting." "You said everything was in the house," Kay said. "Plans changed. Nobody told the pork. The pork will be fine." Kay opened the upper oven, considered its emptiness, and moved 1 pan. The pork is never fine. It is either 6 minutes from dry or 6 minutes from killing somebody. Evelyn liked her immediately. They worked around one another in the kitchen. Kay unpacked goat cheese tartlets, roasted carrots, a jar of glossy onion jam, and a cake covered with a tea towel. Natalie carried candles and menus to the dining room, returning every few minutes with a new request. "Mom, where are the small white plates?" "Cabinet by the sink." "They're not there." "Other sink." "We have 2 sinks." "You grew up here. I didn't catalog it." Evelyn opened the pantry and found the plates on the second shelf. "You used to hide cigarettes behind them." Natalie took the stack. "Could we not discuss that today?" "I was talking to you." "Kay has ears." Kay was slicing the cake. "Kay also had cigarettes." "You still have cigarettes," Evelyn said. "I have emergencies." Natalie left with the plates. Kay waited until the dining room door swung shut. "She told me you were moving to the cottage. She moved me. I wondered about the wording." "What wording?" "Mom's transitioning into the renovated residence." Sounded like a press release from a nursing home. Evelyn wiped flour from the counter, though there was no flour. "Did she tell the clients?" "She tells clients everything that makes the farm sound settled. Nothing here has ever been settled. 1 August, the well pump quit during a pickle order. Put that on the website." Natalie returned before Evelyn could answer. "They're coming up the drive?" Through the window, a dark SUV passed under the Mercer sign. Michelle Boone and David Hanley had booked a June wedding after touring the farm twice. Michelle's sister, Angela, and David's mother, Ruth, came with them. All four were dressed for photographs, though Ruth wore hiking shoes beneath tailored trousers. Natalie met them at the front door with the smile she used for clients, warmer than her ordinary smile, more interested in whatever had just been said. Evelyn had seen Frank use a similar expression at the livestock auction. Introductions moved through the hall. Natalie called Evelyn the heart of the orchard. Evelyn looked at her, but Natalie was already leading everyone toward the cider. Michelle admired the braided runner. "My grandmother had one just like it," she said. "She may have given it to a church rummage sale," Evelyn replied. "That's where I got this one." Michelle laughed. Natalie's shoulders eased. The tasting began well. Kay's tartlets were crisp at the edges and warm in the middle. The onion jam had enough vinegar to keep it from becoming candy. David ate his in 2 bites and tried to take another before Michelle finished photographing hers. "You said rustic," Kay told him. "Rustic food moves fast." Ruth asked intelligent questions about dietary restrictions. Angela asked whether Kay could do a late-night snack without making the shed smell like fryer oil. Natalie answered when the question belonged to Kay and redirected whenever Evelyn mentioned the building's limitations. Evelyn poured cider and stayed mostly quiet. It felt peculiar to watch strangers praise the dining room while Natalie observed their reactions. The brass fixture Frank had chosen still lay on a blanket in the garage. In its place, a temporary bulb hung from the ceiling. Natalie had draped eucalyptus around the cord. "You can make anything look intentional," Michelle said. "That's the goal," Natalie replied. They carried their glasses through the side hall to view the staircase. "Is this where we'll get ready?" Michelle asked. "The upstairs rooms have beautiful natural light," Natalie said. "We're updating the main bath now, and the farmhouse package gives us Friday and Saturday nights." Natalie looked toward Evelyn, who was standing beside the coat closet. "We're making a few adjustments to lodging," she said. Michelle's smile remained, but it became attentive. "What kind of adjustments?" "The cottage is newly renovated and may actually be the better option. It has a walk-in shower, private porch, full kitchen." "For how many?" David asked. "2 comfortably." "4 if we bring in." "We have 6 staying," Michelle said. "I thought the cottage was for your mother," Ruth said. Nobody looked at Evelyn except Kay. Natalie's voice brightened. "We have flexibility across the property." "No, we don't," Evelyn said. The sentence was not loud. It was not even unfriendly. Still, the eucalyptus seemed to wilt around the temporary bulb. Michelle looked between them. "I'm sorry, I may be confused." "You're not," Natalie said quickly. "My mother was going to use the cottage and the farmhouse would be available with the venue. We're reconsidering the best arrangement." "You're reconsidering after we booked?" David asked. "I'm not renting the farmhouse," Evelyn said. "The cottage is available. It's nice. Nicer than it has any right to be." Ruth frowned. "But this is your home." "Yes. And you were going to leave every time there was a wedding." "That was the plan," Natalie said. "No," Evelyn said. "That was Natalie's plan." Michelle set her glass on the entry table. "We paid for farmhouse lodging." "I know," Evelyn said. Natalie turned. "Mom, could I talk to you in the kitchen? You have company, now." In the kitchen, Kay stood at the island arranging carrots as though vegetables required her complete moral attention. Natalie shut the door. "You said you wouldn't make a scene." "I answered a question." "You could have let me explain." "You were explaining a house with 6 people in it. I was trying to offer options. Offer the cottage. They don't want the cottage. Then return that part of the money." Natalie glanced at Kay. Kay moved 1 carrot half an inch to the left. "Could we have privacy?" Natalie asked. "I'm responsible for pork," Kay said. "It's in this room." Natalie looked at Evelyn. "Please." Evelyn went to the pantry doorway, which was as private as she intended to get. Natalie followed. "I needed 10 minutes to walk them through it." "Walk them where?" "Through the alternatives. There are inns nearby. We could cover transportation. We could." "Then say that." "You made it sound like I deceived them." "You did." Natalie's face changed, not anger this time, hurt, naked, and almost young. "I believed you'd agree once you saw the cottage. You believed I would give in. I believed you'd be relieved. Those aren't the same. I spent 3 weeks fixing that place for you. I chose every light, every towel, every stupid non-slip rug. And it is lovely. You hated it. I hated being put there. Natalie pressed her lips together. From the hall came the murmur of Michelle and David talking. Their careful low voices were worse than shouting. I can't refund everybody, Natalie whispered. Everybody? The other June couple? May? This one. You said 2 weddings, 2 with lodging deposits. There are other couples considering it. Evelyn gripped the pantry shelf. The orchard was full of things that became worse if ignored. Canker, rust, mice in feed, water under a foundation. Natalie had inherited that knowledge and somehow learned the opposite lesson. You will stop offering the house today. I already have. You will put it in writing to everyone who booked. And if they cancel, then they cancel. Easy for you to say. No, it is not. Natalie gave a small, disbelieving shake of her head. You have no idea what I put into this. Evelyn looked through the pantry door at the menus, the polished glasses, and Kay's cake waiting beneath its towel. You're right, she said, because you stopped telling me when you decided asking was optional. They returned to the others. Michelle did not cancel. She did not forgive the change either. She asked Natalie for a revised total and a list of nearby accommodations by Monday. David wanted to see the cottage. Ruth asked Evelyn whether she was certain she wanted strangers staying anywhere on the property. Strangers have been staying here for 40 years, Evelyn said, mostly Frank's cousins. That earned a laugh, though Natalie did not join it. They finished the tasting in the packing shed. The long room looked handsome under Natalie's acrylic chandeliers, which did not look acrylic at all once lit. Kay's pork was tender. Michelle chose it for the main course. Business continued because it often had to continue through embarrassment. After the SUV left, Natalie gathered the printed menus into a perfect stack. I'll send the revision Monday, she said to no one in particular. Kay packed the remaining food. Invoice stays the same. I didn't ask you to change it. You were about to. Natalie met her eyes. I wasn't. All right. The women looked at each other with the brittle courtesy of people who had disagreed before. Natalie carried the candles to her car. Kay waited until the door closed behind her, then handed Evelyn the cake. She ordered it, Evelyn said. She didn't pay for it. Why not? Said it was a sample. Evelyn looked down at the cake. How often does she do that? Kay slid her red glasses onto her nose. Your daughter has a talent for making everybody feel like they're investing in the future. The phrase sounded familiar enough to belong to Frank. Outside, Natalie's trunk slammed. Evelyn set the cake back on the island. How much? She asked. For the cake? For everything she hasn't noticed costs somebody else. Depends how honest you want me to be, Kay said. Painfully. For today? Ingredients, 11 hours, mileage, and $200 in sample portions. I'll recover most of it if they hire me for the wedding. They already hired you. They hired Natalie, who told them catering packages start at $48 a head. I have not seen the package. Evelyn looked toward the kitchen door. Outside, Natalie was loading candle holders into her trunk, one careful box at a time. Have you been paid anything? $100 tasting fee. That cake alone cost more than that. It did not. It would if you charged for your time. Kay removed her glasses. Without the red frames, her face looked softer and more tired. Don't start, she said. Start what? That thing women do when we discover another woman has been working too cheap. We act scandalized so we don't have to examine our own prices. Evelyn glanced at the cake. Avery Orchard Preserves had begun with 12 jars of apple butter sold from a card table. Even after grocery stores started carrying it, she had priced her hours as though stirring kettles after supper did not count, because she was already in the kitchen. I asked what Natalie hasn't noticed, she said. Oh, she notices. She just calls it partnership. Frank called it pitching in. Wayne called it being supportive. Wayne was Kay's former husband. Evelyn knew him mostly as a man who could eat 6 deviled eggs while explaining why he did not like mayonnaise. What did you call it? Evelyn asked. Marriage, until the lawyer gave it a different name. The mudroom door opened. Natalie came in carrying an empty canvas bag. What are we talking about? Cake, Kay said. You can take it, Mom. I don't need it. You ordered it, Evelyn said. For the tasting. Kay says you didn't pay for it. Natalie stopped beside the island. The tasting fee covers samples. The tasting fee covered about a third of my costs, Kay said. That's the arrangement you proposed. It's the arrangement you accepted on my behalf. You told me to handle the clients. I told you to handle scheduling. Natalie looked from Kay to Evelyn. Is this an ambush? No, Evelyn said. An ambush has more planning. I'm not doing this with both of you. Kay put on her glasses. You're doing it with me. Evelyn asked a question. Fine, send me an invoice. I have, 3 times. I paid the September event. I'm talking about today. The client hasn't paid their second installment. My grocery store doesn't take bridal installments. Natalie set the canvas bag on the counter. I will pay you Monday, thank you. Was that so hard? Natalie asked. Kay lifted the cake. Ask me Monday. She left through the mudroom, taking her purse, knives, and the last of the pork. Natalie watched the door close. You didn't need to involve yourself. I bought the cider. For a tasting meant to bring business to the farm. The cider didn't grow in the packing shed. Natalie rubbed both hands over her face. I cannot turn every apple, plate, and electrical outlet into a separate transaction. Why not? Because that isn't how a family operation works. Evelyn waited. Natalie lowered her hands. I heard it. Good. I'm not Dad. I didn't say you were. You don't have to anymore. She took the remaining menus and left without the cake. Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by half-filled glasses. A candle had burned low enough to spill wax on one of her mother's linen napkins. The pork smelled rich in the warm room. Under the table, somebody had ground a tartlet into the braided rug. She wanted to blame Natalie for all of it. Then she remembered carrying cider to tastings without asking who paid, lending dishes because they were already there, telling Kay not to fuss when she brought extra food. Natalie had learned to build a business from people who called unpaid labor generosity. Evelyn found a butter knife and scraped wax from the napkin. On Monday morning, Luis came to the back porch carrying a yellow legal pad. I need decisions, he said. Evelyn was drinking coffee in Frank's chair, though she had never liked sitting in it while he was alive. The cushion leaned too far back and made her feel as if she were being examined by a dentist. Good morning to you too. Morning, need decisions? He placed the pad on her lap. 3 items were written in his square handwriting. North block, lower fence, Saturday tables. What tables? She asked. Natalie wants the folding tables moved from storage to the shed and cleaned. That takes 2 people half a day. She wants them by Thursday. Then she can hire 2 people. Luis nodded. That is a decision. You don't move them. Another decision. What's wrong with the north block? 2 more trees show canker. Ground's too soft for the tractor. Need handwork. Evelyn looked toward the orchard. Morning fog lay between the rows, pale as breath on glass. And the fence? Deer went through below the pond. Can you do both? Not this week. You have Mateo and Jesse. They work 26 hours here and 14 setting up the shed. Evelyn looked back at him. 14, last week. Lights, chairs, gravel. Natalie said she hired help. She did. Us. Did she pay the farm? She paid me what you pay me. That isn't what I asked. Luis tucked his thumbs into his jacket pockets. You sign my check. The answer carried no blame. That made it impossible to push away. How long has this been happening? Since July, more or less. Why didn't you tell me? Told Frank 20 years when something took time. He said, get it done. I'm not Frank. No. Again, no blame. Somehow even worse. Evelyn set her coffee down. Orchard comes first. North block today, fence tomorrow if it dries. No venue work on farm hours unless I approve it. Luis did not write. What? She asked. When Natalie asks me Thursday, I say, Evelyn said no. You say the farm work comes first. She will say the wedding is farm work. Evelyn felt irritation rise, then recognized it as embarrassment with its coat on. Tell her to ask me. That puts me between. You're already between. I want out. The directness of it startled her. Luis tapped the legal pad. I want my hours clear. Orchard hours, venue hours. If venue wants help, venue hires me. If orchard wants help, orchard hires me. I don't want to carry messages between you and Natalie. That's fair. I know. You could pretend to think about it. I thought since Saturday. He gave her the pad. At the bottom, beneath the 3 items, he had drawn 2 columns. Farm and venue. I'll talk to her, Evelyn said. Write it down. You don't trust my memory. I trust you to remember what you meant. I want us to remember the same thing. After he left, Evelyn remained in Frank's chair with the pad on her knees. The north tractor did need tires. The lower fence needed wire and 2 posts. The oldest wine saps were producing less each season, but pulling them meant losing apples while replacements matured. Frank had made up shortages by working longer. Evelyn had made them up by working beside him and pretending neither of them had aged. She went to the farm office, a narrow room behind the pantry, and opened the accounting program on the old desktop computer. The fan started with a sound like a distant vacuum. She created 2 categories: Avery, farm; Mercer, farm, weddings. The names looked theatrical on the screen, as if she were typing menu headings. She entered Luis's hours, then Mateo's and Jesse's. She found receipts for cider, preserves, flowers, and cleaning supplies used at the packing shed. She did not charge for the old tables, though the thought crossed her mind. At 11, Natalie arrived carrying Warren Pike's color board. He had left it at the gate in a plastic sleeve when nobody answered. "You picked sage green?" she asked. "I haven't picked. It looks gray. So does sage when it's wet. Forest green would show better from the road." Evelyn studied her daughter. "You're helping with the sign now? I'm capable of disliking the name and the color separately." She laid the samples on the desk. Evelyn turned the monitor so Natalie could see. "Luis won't do venue work on farm time anymore." Natalie read the 2 headings. Her expression changed at the second. "You named the farm already. I ordered the sign Friday. That isn't what I mean." "You changed the accounts. I separated expenses." "Why?" "Because cider isn't free. Neither is labor. This is because of K. This is because of arithmetic." Natalie pulled out the other chair. "The venue is part of the farm. It sits on the farm. So does the cottage. That doesn't make the cottage an apple tree. Every dollar the venue earns helps preserve this property. Once it earns dollars, it has. Not enough to pay K. I paid her this morning." Evelyn was glad, but she did not show it. "Good. Luis told you about the setup hours." "He did. I was going to transfer money when the next deposits came in." "You already spent the current deposits. On the farm, on your business." Natalie slapped one hand against the desk. "Stop saying it like that." "Like what?" "Your business. As if I'm running a beauty salon in the barn. I came back here because you needed help. I did need help. Dad was dying, I remember. You couldn't keep up with him and the harvest and the books. I left my job. I left Richmond. I handled hospice, medications, vendors, taxes, and I am grateful." "No, you aren't. You resent me. Both can be true." Natalie stared at her. Evelyn looked at the monitor. "I should have separated this from the beginning. You told me we were building it together. I thought together meant we discuss things." "You mean you had the final word?" "On my house? Yes." "On the shed?" "We agreed on the shed. On every apple and flower? They cost money." Natalie leaned toward the screen. "What is this?" "Saturday's tasting." Evelyn had totaled the cider, flowers, preserves used in the welcome samples, kitchen supplies, and 7 hours of Mateo's time cleaning the parking area. She had priced everything at the same rates charged to local stores and outside renters. No family markup. No punishment fee. Natalie read the total twice. "You are invoicing me? I'm showing you what the tasting costs the farm. $486? Kay's bill is separate. This is absurd. It's itemized." Natalie took the printed page from the desk. "You charge me for dish soap. Half a bottle. I washed your dishes too. Then I'll subtract 19 cents. Natalie tore the invoice down the middle. The sound was small. 2 quick rips, then 4 pieces on the desk. Evelyn looked at them. Natalie's breathing was uneven. "Is that your answer?" Evelyn asked. "My answer is I will not let you turn this family into a stack of receipts." She stood, knocking the color board to the floor, and left the office. Evelyn waited until the mudroom door slammed. Then she turned back to the computer and printed another copy. The second copy came out with a faint black stripe down the right edge. Evelyn folded it into thirds, put it in an envelope, and wrote "Mercer Farm Weddings" across the front. She carried it to the packing shed. Natalie's office occupied what had once been the scale room. The old grain scale remained in the floor, covered by a rug, and the walls were lined with fabric samples, floor plans, and photographs of candlelit tables. In every picture, the shed looked larger than it was. Evelyn admired the trick without wanting to admit it. She placed the envelope on the desk beside a jar of sharpened pencils. A wastebasket held the torn pieces of the first invoice. Evelyn stood over it, annoyed that Natalie had carried them all the way across the yard instead of dropping them in the farmhouse trash. Even her anger was organized. She left the pieces where they were. By Wednesday, the North Block had surrendered 3 wine saps. Luis painted orange rings around their trunks, and Evelyn walked the rows with him after lunch. The ground pulled at her boots. Wet leaves stuck to the knees of her jeans where she crouched to examine the bark. When she stood, her left leg took an extra second to straighten. Luis pretended not to notice. "We cut these after harvest," he said. "They won't make harvest. Then next week." "With what crew?" He looked at her. "Don't do that," she said. "Do what?" "Make your eyebrows answer. My eyebrows have seniority." She put one hand against the nearest trunk. The bark had split near the base, exposing dark wood beneath. "How many years before replacements produce properly?" 4. 5 if you buy cheap trees. We have never bought cheap trees. Frank bought 20 cheap Goldens in 2003 and complained about them until 2017. He liked long arguments with people who couldn't answer. Luis smiled and started down the row. Evelyn followed more slowly. "What if we take out half the block and stagger the replacements? Less fruit next 2 years. We're getting less fruit now. More work first year. Everything is more work the first year." He stopped. "You have the people, I have you. You have me 40 hours. She heard the boundary because he meant her to. "And Mateo and Jesse," she said. 26, orchard only. Orchard only. We can do half. But lower field won't get cleaned before winter." The lower field had not harmed anyone by being untidy in 70 years. Frank had simply hated seeing windfall apples from the road. "Let it look bad," Evelyn said. Luis nodded once. "That's a decision." He wrote it on the yellow pad. Natalie's check appeared Thursday morning, tucked under the farmhouse doormat. The memo line read, "Farm expenses," and the amount was $485.81. Evelyn held it up to the light. 19 cents missing. She laughed so suddenly that coffee came through her nose. The phone rang while she was cleaning the table. It was Mary Ann, home from her sister's house and already bored with recovery. "You sound like you swallowed a goose," Mary Ann said. "Natalie paid an invoice. I didn't know daughters did that. Mine deducted half the dish soap." "Reasonable. Did she wash half the dishes?" "She claims she did. She always dried when we had Thanksgiving. You were too picky about stacking. My dishes have never been chipped because nobody was allowed to touch them." Evelyn wiped coffee from the legal pad. "I'm changing the farm name." Mary Ann went quiet. "Avery Farm," Evelyn said. "I heard you." Well, what? Say something. You've never required help with that." Evelyn could picture Mary Ann in the recliner, one leg propped on pillows, hair pinned up with the tortoiseshell clip she had owned since 1979. "Do you think it's foolish?" "I think Mama would climb out of the ground to see it. That is not comforting. She'd bring a picnic. Frank's name has been on the gate since before Natalie could read. And yours has been on every tax return, seed order, hospital form, condolence card, and church casserole. You aren't erasing Mercer. Natalie thinks I am. Natalie thinks the farm is a person. So did Frank. So do you." Evelyn looked through the window. Luis and Mateo were loading pruned limbs onto the flatbed. "Maybe." "Why Avery now?" "Because Mercer became a word people use when they want something. That sounds like a reason to change your telephone number, not the gate." Evelyn leaned against the counter. "She moved me into the cottage. You told me. She made it nice. You told me that too. I keep thinking if she had made it awful, I would know exactly what to feel." Mary Ann sighed. "Evie, a velvet-lined coffin is still a coffin. That's dramatic." "I had surgery. They gave me dramatic medicine." After the call, Evelyn found the color board where Natalie had left it in the office. She chose a deep green, darker than sage, and lighter than forest. Warren called that afternoon. "Job in Lexington pushed back," he said. "I can cut your board tomorrow if you're certain." "Tomorrow? Install late afternoon." He said it as if speed were a favor. Evelyn felt the decision tilt beneath her. She could tell him to wait. 3 weeks would give Natalie time to grow accustomed to an idea that was impossible to grow accustomed to. 3 weeks would also give Evelyn time to lose her nerve. "Tomorrow," she said. At 10 Friday morning, a moving company van came through the gate. 2 men unloaded folding tables beside the packing shed. Evelyn watched from the farm stand while sorting jars of apple butter. Natalie stood in the shed doorway, checking each table against a list. She had hired help. She had also tied her hair back with a green ribbon that matched the venue menus. When the movers finished, Natalie walked to the stand carrying the envelope Evelyn had left on her desk. "You deposited the check?" "This morning." "You're welcome." "Thank you." Natalie set the envelope on a crate. "I've opened a separate checking account for venue expenses." That was fast. "I know how to open an account. I meant the decision." "You want it separate." "Separate costs money. Most useful things do." "I'm moving all event purchases there. Catering, rentals, advertising. I'll pay the farm a flat facility fee." "Who decides the fee?" "We do." The word landed differently this time. Evelyn turned another jar so the label faced forward. "All right. I'm not paying retail for apples. Wholesale. And flowers at cost. Flowers include labor. I can buy flowers elsewhere. You can." Natalie seemed disappointed by the lack of resistance. "We should sit down Sunday," she said. "Make a list. I'll make coffee. That is not a contribution to negotiations. It is in this family." Natalie rubbed a thumb along the envelope's edge. The May couple canceled. Evelyn stopped touching the jars. Because of the farmhouse, they found a vineyard near Charlottesville with guest rooms. "I'm sorry. It cost me 40% of my spring revenue. The deposit?" "I returned the lodging amount. They were still inside their cancellation window for the venue." Evelyn looked at her daughter's face. Natalie had put makeup under her eyes, but the skin remained bruised-looking. "You did the right thing," Evelyn said. "That doesn't pay Kay." "No, or the loan. No, or your new sign. That is my expense." Natalie glanced toward the gate. "When is it coming?" Evelyn could have lied. Warren had said late afternoon. The old board might remain for hours. "Today." Natalie's thumb stopped moving. "You said 3 weeks. He had a cancellation." "Of course he did. I was going to tell you." "When?" "Now. Because I happened to ask." "That is how you told me about the locks." Natalie dropped the envelope on the crate. "Do you have to use every mistake I made forever? It has been 1 week. You have made sure it feels longer." She turned away, then faced Evelyn again. "I changed the locks because I thought if you stayed in that house, nothing would ever change. You would keep sleeping in the same room, sitting in Dad's chair, checking trees until your knee gave out. I thought the cottage might make you see you could live differently. You don't get to force somebody free. I know that now." "Do you? I canceled a wedding because you wouldn't leave your bedroom." "Yes, Mom, I know." Evelyn heard the grief beneath the sarcasm. She also heard the accusation, and could not pretend it did not hurt. Warren's green van arrived at 4:20. Natalie was in the packing shed. Luis and Mateo had returned from the lower fence. Evelyn met Warren at the gate, where he laid the new sign on padded sawhorses. The cream paint was warm rather than white. Avery Farm stretched across it in deep green letters, clean and sure. Beneath, smaller but still readable, ran orchard, kitchen, and gathering table. It was beautiful. That made Evelyn feel worse. Warren climbed a ladder to unbolt the Mercer board. One iron bracket had rusted around the screw. He leaned into the wrench. "Hold up," Luis called. "You'll split it." He fetched penetrating oil and a different tool. Natalie came down the drive while they waited for it to loosen. Nobody announced what was happening. She stopped 10 feet from the gate. Warren removed the first bolt. Luis steadied one end while Mateo held the other. Evelyn stood beneath them, ready to take weight that her knee had no business taking. "Don't," Natalie said. All four looked at her. "Don't let it fall." "I wasn't planning to," Evelyn said. Natalie stepped forward and took Evelyn's place beneath the board. The last bolt came free. The old sign settled into Natalie's hands, heavier than its size suggested. Luis and Mateo carried the ends, but she kept both palms under the center, beneath Frank's painted word. They walked it to the equipment barn. "Against the wall?" Luis asked. Natalie looked at Evelyn. "Face up," Evelyn said. "The paint will rub," Natalie replied. "Put it face down on the moving blankets." They lowered it carefully. By the time they returned, Warren had mounted the new board. The green letters stood sharp against the evening sky. Natalie stopped in the middle of the drive. Evelyn wanted to say that the shed could keep Mercer. She wanted to say Frank had not vanished, that no one could take a father with a wrench and a ladder. Every sentence sounded like something said by the person who had gotten her way. Natalie looked through the gate at the farmhouse, the orchard, and the packing shed beyond. It looks like a place I was never born, she said. Then she walked back to work under her father's name. Warren packed his ladders while the light faded. Before leaving, he handed Evelyn a small jar of cream paint. For scratches, he said. Is that likely? Everything gets scratched. He glanced toward the equipment barn, where the old board rested on moving blankets, and then toward the packing shed. You want a receipt mailed or emailed? Mailed. Figured. Why did you ask? Optimism. After his van passed beneath the new sign, Evelyn remained at the gate. The letters did not look less strange when viewed from the other side. Avery faced the road. The back of the board was blank. Frank had painted Mercer on both sides because he said a farm ought to know its name coming and going. Evelyn went to the barn and found a pencil on the workbench. On the back of the new sign, low enough that no one would see from the road, she wrote, Mercer Farm, 1987, 2025. It was a foolish little memorial. She felt better after doing it. The first customer beneath the Avery sign arrived before 9 the next morning. Nora Dillard parked crookedly by the farm stand, got out with her reusable shopping bags, and stared up the drive. Did you sell? She asked. No. Then who's Avery? Me. Nora looked at Evelyn as if she had just claimed to be the governor. Since when? Since 1956. You know what I mean. I changed the farm name. Why? Needed changing. Nora glanced toward the packing shed. Natalie, no? She can read too. Nora's mouth pressed tight around a smile. I need 3 apple butters and a pepper jelly. People noticed the sign all morning. Some approved too loudly. Some lowered their voices and asked whether there had been trouble. One man who had bought cider from the farm for 20 years drove past the sign, parked, and still wrote Mercer on his check. At noon, Evelyn stopped correcting anyone. Paint had changed the view, not the habits beneath it. Natalie stayed in the packing shed. 2 prospective couples toured that afternoon, but she brought neither group through the farmhouse. When one woman asked about accommodations, Natalie handed her a printed sheet listing 3 inns and the cottage. Evelyn watched from the farm stand and felt a relief she did not entirely enjoy. Near closing, Natalie crossed the yard carrying a binder. Tomorrow at 10, she asked. Coffee? Numbers. Numbers need coffee. Fine. She started back toward the shed. Natalie, she turned. The new lodging sheet is good. Natalie hugged the binder closer. I made it at 3 this morning. I didn't say it was fast. No? You said it was good. Evelyn nodded. Natalie looked up at the sign once before walking away. At 10 the next morning, she arrived at the farmhouse with the binder, her laptop, and a bag from the bakery in town. She placed 2 cheese danishes on the table between them. Are these deductible? Evelyn asked. They're bribes. That's a cleaner category. Natalie opened the binder. The first page showed anticipated venue income by month. The second listed loans, deposits, advertising, utilities, rentals, and outstanding invoices. Evelyn put on her reading glasses. The numbers were not good. They were not catastrophic either, which almost made them worse. Catastrophe required 1 decision. Natalie's business required 20 small decisions every week and could be wounded by any one of them. You paid Kay? Evelyn asked. Monday. Fully? Yes. Show me. Natalie turned the page and pointed to the line. I believe you. You asked to see. I asked whether you paid her. You said, show me. Evelyn took a bite of Danish. Proceed. Natalie proposed a monthly fee for use of the packing shed, parking field, and designated ceremony areas. Orchard flowers and fruit would be billed at wholesale rates. Any use of farm employees would require separate hours approved ahead of time. The farmhouse kitchen would be rented by the hour for tastings until Natalie installed a catering prep room in the shed. No weddings in my kitchen, Evelyn said. Tastings only? No more than 8 people. 10. 8 people and Kay. Kay is a person. Not when she's responsible for pork. Natalie wrote 9. The cottage could be rented for 2 guests, provided Evelyn received the same notice given for other events. No one would enter the orchard without checking in. No vehicles beyond the lower parking field, unless weather or disability required it. Natalie tapped her pen. The ceremony site is inside the orchard, the edge of it. People want photographs between the trees. People twist ankles, break branches, and eat fruit that has been sprayed. So, what do you propose? Marked rows. Deirdre can? Evelyn stopped. Who is Deirdre? Natalie asked. Nobody yet? That sounds promising. Luis knows someone who may help with the North Block. You're hiring? Maybe. We're cutting employee hours from the venue. And you're hiring somebody. We're returning orchard hours to the orchard. You could ask me. To prune trees? I know how to prune. You remove every branch that looks untidy. I can learn. The quickness of the answer caught Evelyn off guard. You don't like orchard work, she said. I didn't like doing it at 16. You didn't like it at 30 either. At 30, Dad corrected me for holding a ladder wrong. He corrected the rain for falling wrong. Exactly. Natalie closed the binder partway. I came back to help save this place. You gave me the part you didn't want anymore, and now you're charging me rent for it. I gave you the building you asked for. I asked because you and Dad had let it sit empty for 8 years. We stored things in it. You stored 6 broken fans and a machine nobody could identify. It pitted cherries. It had a bird's nest in it. The bird identified it. Natalie fought a smile and lost. For several seconds they sat with the open binder and the half-eaten pastries between them. It felt almost like an ordinary disagreement, the kind they might once have had over Thanksgiving chairs. Then Natalie said, "Are you planning to sell the farm?" No. "Are you planning to leave it to somebody else?" Evelyn removed her glasses. "I'm asking because of the sign," Natalie said, "and the accounts, and whoever Deirdre is. I ordered a sign. I did not write a will on the gate. That isn't an answer. I don't have one for you. You promised. I know, all my life, I know." Natalie looked toward the window. The green letters were visible above the drive. "If I build a business here, and you decide Avery Farm means Avery's private kingdom, what happens to me? You build a business that can pay its way while we're both alive. That sounds like you're preparing me to leave. It sounds like I'm asking you not to depend on my death." The words took the warmth out of the room. Natalie's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "That is a cruel way to say it." "It may be. You think I'm waiting for you to die? I think we both talked about the farm as if your future required it. My future was supposed to include it. Include is not the same as consume." Natalie shut the binder. "We were doing well," Evelyn said. "We agreed on fees. I'll email them." "Don't email, print." "Of course." She gathered her laptop and stood. Evelyn touched the bakery bag. "Take the other Danish. It's yours." "I can't eat 2. Freeze it. It'll taste like cardboard. Then give it to Luis. He'll say Celia makes better." "She does." Natalie left the pastry behind. Luis arrived after lunch with Deirdre Shaw in a battered blue hatchback that made a metallic cough when she turned off the engine. Deirdre was 31, tall and narrow, with sun-browned skin and dark hair braided down her back. Her work boots were clean enough to show she had made an effort, but the knees of her canvas pants were permanently stained with soil. She shook Evelyn's hand firmly. "Luis says you need help removing an old block and planning replacements." "Half a block." Deirdre glanced toward Luis. He studied the sky. "We'll look," Evelyn said. They walked the wine-sap rows. Deirdre did not talk to prove she knew things. She examined graft unions, spacing, drainage, and the orange-ringed trunks. She used a pocket knife to lift one edge of diseased bark, then cleaned the blade with alcohol before touching another tree. "How long have you worked orchards?" Evelyn asked. 5 seasons. 2 in Pennsylvania, 3 here, nursery in winter. You move a lot. Landowners change plans. You want permanent? I want enough responsibility to make staying useful." They reached the worst section. Deirdre counted silently. "You should remove 12, she said. 6. 12 are declining. 6 are diseased. 6 are obviously diseased. These 3 are crowded. Those 2 have poor structure, and that one leans into the drainage path. It has leaned for 20 years. So, have buildings right before they fall." Evelyn put a hand on the leaning trunk. Frank had grafted this tree from an older wine-sap his father planted. It produced small, sharp apples that made excellent butter and ugly display baskets. "We take 6, she said. Deirdre nodded. "Then we plan to take the next 6 within 3 years. You don't surrender easily. I'm agreeing with you in stages." Luis's eyebrows approved. Back at the farmhouse, they discussed pay. Evelyn offered 15 hours a week through winter. Deirdre asked for 25. "I can't promise that," Evelyn said. "Then I keep 2 days at the nursery. Will they allow it?" "They don't own my Tuesdays. You're direct. It saves gas." Evelyn offered 18 hours, with additional paid days during removal and planting. Deirdre asked who made field decisions when Evelyn was not present. Luis. And when Luis isn't, call me. What if you don't answer? I answer. Luis coughed. Evelyn frowned at him. Usually. Deirdre looked between them. I don't want to be a pair of hands. I want to learn the operation. I need a pair of hands. Then we may both be disappointed. No one had spoken to Evelyn that way in an interview. Frank would have ended it there. Evelyn felt his reaction rise inside her, complete with the clearing of his throat. When can you start? She asked. Tuesday. As Deirdre drove out, Natalie came from the packing shed. Is that the nobody? She asked. She starts Tuesday. Natalie watched the hatchback pass under the new sign. You hired her quickly. She asked good questions. So did I this morning. Yes. You didn't answer mine. No. Natalie folded her arms against the cold. From the orchard, Luis's saw started, paused, and started again. I don't want your house, Natalie said. I want to know there's still a place here where I don't have to make a reservation. Evelyn looked toward the cottage, the farmhouse, and Frank's name above the packing shed door. There were keys to every building in her pocket. For once she understood that having an answer and being ready to give it were different things. I'm still trying to find that place myself, she said. Natalie looked as though she wanted to argue, but the fight went out of her shoulders. At least you have a key to yours, she said. She returned to the packing shed before Evelyn could decide whether to follow. Deirdre arrived Tuesday at 7 with a thermos, a pruning saw, and a notebook wrapped in a freezer bag. Luis showed her the equipment barn, while Evelyn finished a batch of labels in the kitchen. By 8, Deirdre was in the north block, marking the 6 trees scheduled for removal. Evelyn found orange rings around 9 trunks. I said 6. You said we were taking 6 now. 9 are marked, 3 are for next year. Orange means removal. You didn't tell me that. It always means removal. Everywhere? Here. Deirdre capped the paint marker. I asked whether you had a field map or marking key. I've never needed one. You've been here 43 years. Exactly. That was my point. Evelyn crouched to examine the nearest ring. It was thin and incomplete, not the solid band Luis used. Deirdre had distinguished future removals after all, just not in a language Evelyn recognized. Use yellow for next year, Evelyn said. Do we have yellow? In the cabinet beside the sprayer parts. Which cabinet? The green one. There are 4 green cabinets. Evelyn straightened too fast and felt her knee catch. The narrow one, she said. Left or right side? You'll see it. Deirdre stared at her. Frank had often sent seasonal workers to fetch tools by describing where an object ought to be, rather than where it was. Then he would become irritated when they returned empty-handed. Evelyn had spent years translating after the fact. Right wall, she said. Second cabinet from the big doors. Bottom shelf. Deirdre wrote it down. You don't have to record where every paint marker lives. I do if nobody labels the cabinets. Evelyn looked toward the barn. From the outside, the 4 green doors were identical. We'll label them this afternoon. That wasn't criticism. It was accurate criticism. Deirdre tucked the notebook away. Those are rare. Don't get used to them. They worked until noon. Deirdre climbed the pruning ladder with the balance of someone who trusted both her body and the ground beneath it. Evelyn held branches, dragged brush, and tried not to calculate the difference between 31 and 69 every time she stood up. At lunch, her hands shook enough to slosh soup over the rim of her thermos. Deirdre noticed. She did not offer to open anything or tell Evelyn to sit down. She simply shifted the crate they were using as a table so the thermos stood closer. Evelyn appreciated that more than help. Why orchards? She asked. Trees don't pretend a bad season didn't happen. That sounds cheerful. I worked office jobs first. And people pretended, people had meetings. Luis bit into his sandwich. Trees also have meetings. Takes them longer. Deirdre smiled. I want land eventually? Everybody wants land until it needs fencing, Evelyn said. I can't afford enough to discover that. You could lease. I have. Owners sell, heirs change plans, rents go up after you improve the soil. The words were matter of fact, but Evelyn heard what sat beneath them. Deirdre did not want acres as scenery. She wanted to stay long enough for work to remember her. You can learn the packing shed refrigeration next week, Evelyn said. Orchard refrigeration? Unless Natalie has started chilling brides. Luis choked on his coffee. That afternoon, they labeled the cabinets. Deirdre printed clean block letters on white adhesive tape. Evelyn changed sprayer stuff to sprayer parts and misc to fasteners because Deirdre said miscellaneous was not a category. It is when you own enough miscellaneous, Evelyn said. Then you own clutter. Do you want to finish your first day employed? Deirdre handed her the marker. You write this one. By closing, Evelyn's knee had swollen against her jeans. She drove the farm truck from the barn to the house, a distance she had walked twice daily for decades. No one commented. The sign caused a different problem. Customers kept asking about the smaller words. What's a gathering table? Nora Dillard wanted to know on Thursday. A table where people gather. Do you have one? Several. What do you do at it? Eat, mostly. Is this a new farm dinner thing? Evelyn glanced up at her own sign. Warren's lettering had advertised something she had named before imagining. It might be. Nora put 2 jars of apple butter in her bag. Let me know. My bridge group is tired of the same Italian place. After she left, Kay came through the farm stand door, carrying an empty produce crate. I need 20 pounds of firm apples, she said. Not pretty. They're going in tarts. Wholesale? Are you going to charge me retail after that lecture? Just checking whether the lesson held. Evelyn filled the crate with stamens from the back. Kay noticed her favoring her left leg. I'm not asking, she said. Good. I'm observing disapprovingly. You and Luis could form a club. Kay tapped the words on the sign through the window. When's the first gathering? Nora asked that. Nora asks what everybody else waits to gossip about. I haven't planned anything. You put it on a 12-foot board. I was upset. Most people buy shoes. Evelyn sat on the stool behind the register. What would you do? With a gathering table? Yes, harvest supper, 40 people, 1 seating, apples in every course except dessert. Why not dessert? Because people expect it. I like to keep one mystery. Where? The sorting porch if it's cold. Orchard edge if it isn't. The sorting porch ran along the old fruit handling building behind the packing shed. Frank had roofed it in metal and never managed to make the floor level. Natalie uses the porch for rental storage. Then ask her. Evelyn hesitated. Kay noticed. You could also tell her and repeat history. I would ask. Good. What would you charge? For catering? For all of it. Kay pulled her red glasses down and studied Evelyn over the frames. You mean, what would I charge? Or, what do you think I should charge? What would you charge? Kay named a figure. Evelyn did not flinch. Your name goes on everything, Evelyn said. Menu, tickets, website. Your website looks like it was built during the first Bush administration. It has apples on it. It has a blinking mailbox. People know where to click. People are afraid to click. Kay sat on the opposite stool. Within 20 minutes, they had a rough menu, a date in early November, and more questions than answers. Deirdre could lead a brief orchard walk before supper. Luis knew which rows were safest underfoot. Evelyn would supply produce at the same wholesale rate charged to Natalie. You need somebody who understands events, Kay said. I understand chairs. You understand sitting. That's not the same. Evelyn looked toward the packing shed. Natalie was standing outside with a clipboard while 2 rental company employees measured the entrance. Kay followed her gaze. Ask. Natalie listened without interrupting. That worried Evelyn more than anger would have. A farm supper, she said when Evelyn finished. 1. On the sorting porch, if weather requires it. The porch I've spent 6 months clearing and using for event inventory. You rent that building. My storage spills onto the porch because the shed has no proper storage. We'd need it from noon through 9. On November 8th? Yes. Natalie opened the binder she carried. I have a rehearsal dinner Friday and a wedding Saturday. The supper is Sunday. I'll still be breaking down Saturday's event. We can start later. The rental company collects Monday. Could we move their things to one end? Natalie looked at her. Who is we? Kay, Deirdre, me. Paid help. And you want to rent my tables? I own the tables. You own the old wood tables. The round ones are mine, then the old ones. They need repair. We'll repair them. Natalie closed the binder. Do you hear yourself? Frequently. It's hard not to. You changed the sign, split the accounts, told me every flower has a price, and now you're launching events on my porch. The farm's porch. Of course. Evelyn felt the ground between them begin to harden. You're right, she said. Natalie's expression sharpened. About which part? I'm using your experience and your work as though they belong to the property. That sounded almost like an apology. It was. Do I get paid for helping? Yes. What if my answer is no? Then Kay will make the arrangements, and we won't use the porch. Natalie studied her face. 40 people is too many for your first dinner, she said. You don't have parking staff, service stations, weather backup, ticket software, or enough bathrooms unless you open the shed. So, no, I didn't say no. What did you say? I said, your plan is bad. Kay, waiting by the farm stand, raised both hands when Evelyn looked toward her. Natalie flipped to a blank page. 32 guests, the shed bathrooms stay open. Sorting porch only if it rains. You pay a facility fee, to myself, to Mercer Farm Weddings. The restrooms and storage are part of my operation. That seems backward. It seemed logical when you invoiced me for dish soap. Half a bottle. 19 cents. Evelyn held out her hand for the clipboard. Write your fee. Natalie did. It was reasonable. Your labor? Evelyn asked. That depends on what you want. Tables, lighting, ticket setup, and making it look intentional. Natalie's eyes moved briefly toward the farmhouse, where eucalyptus had hidden a bare bulb. She wrote another figure. Evelyn nodded. Done. You're not going to negotiate? I probably should. You absolutely should. Evelyn offered 20% less. Natalie countered with 10. They settled at 15 and shook hands because neither knew what else to do. Deirdre spent Friday morning measuring the old wood tables. 3 needed braces. 1 had a leg shorter than the others. It has always been that way, Evelyn said. That is not a defense. It works if you put cardboard under it. That is not a table. That is a negotiation with gravity. They carried the worst one to the workshop. When Natalie came through looking for extension cords, she found Deirdre replacing the damaged leg. You're Deirdre, she said. You're Natalie. My mother talks about me. Everyone talks about everyone here. Natalie looked at the table. Those are for the supper? That's what Evelyn says. You can sand the tops, but don't stain them. They photograph better worn. Deirdre glanced at Evelyn. You know tables, Evelyn told Natalie. I know pictures. She found the extension cords in the newly labeled cabinet without asking. Before leaving, Natalie placed a small brass key on the workbench. For the shed bathrooms, she said to Evelyn. Not the office, not the storage room. The blue tape is so you don't mix it up. Evelyn picked it up. Natalie had given her access to a portion of the building that sat on her own land. A month ago, that would have offended her. Now she understood the difference between possessing a place and being trusted inside someone's work. Thank you, she said. Natalie nodded toward the ring clipped to Evelyn's belt. You should label yours. They're different shapes. They're all silver. I know my keys. So, did you last month? The reminder could have been cruel. Natalie delivered it with the faintest curve at one corner of her mouth. Evelyn found the label maker before supper. She marked farmhouse, cottage, office, barn, and shed bathrooms. The blue tape key was the smallest. She put it on the ring anyway. The labels made Evelyn feel absurd for 2 days. On the third, she reached into her pocket in the dark and found the barn key by touch because the label had folded against the ring. She did not tell Natalie. Tickets for the harvest supper went on sale the following Monday. Natalie built the page, Kay wrote the menu, and Evelyn rejected the phrase curated orchard experience before anyone could put it near the public. It means dinner, Natalie said. Then say dinner. People pay more for an experience. They digest both at the same speed. The final listing read Harvest Supper at Avery Farm, with catering by Kay Whitcomb and event design by Mercer Farm Weddings. Deirdre's Orchard Walk appeared beneath their names, not hidden under activities included. Luis refused to be listed at all. I'm eating, he said. That is my role. 32 tickets sold in 4 days. Nora Dillard bought 6 and called twice to ask whether cider came with the price. Evelyn's sister Mary Ann bought 2, despite still using a cane. A couple from Harrisonburg purchased the last seats after seeing Natalie's photographs of the old tables arranged beneath the apple trees. Natalie had repaired nothing, cooked nothing, and planted nothing, yet the pictures made Evelyn want to attend her own supper. You waited until the sun was behind the trees, Evelyn said. That is generally how late afternoon works. You know what I mean. I know light. The old tables returned from the workshop level, braced and clean. Deirdre wanted to seal the tops before winter. Natalie wanted them left worn until after the supper. What happens if it rains? Deirdre asked. Sorting porch, Natalie and Evelyn said together. They looked at each other. Deirdre wrote the answer in her notebook. Preparations revealed how many decisions lived inside a meal. Kay needed electrical outlets, cold storage, hand-washing stations, and a place where 32 bowls could sit without being mistaken for decoration. Natalie wanted small lamps along the tables. Evelyn worried about extension cords and grass. Luis said if anyone stapled lights to a fruit tree, he would remove the person before the staple. The farm employees signed separate sheets for supper hours. Kay collected a deposit. Natalie invoiced for her planning work. Evelyn paid each bill on the day it arrived, though she complained aloud about the cost of renting portable heaters. "You put heat in the cottage," Natalie said. "The cottage has walls. You're paying to eat outdoors in November. I didn't choose November. You chose the date. The apples chose the season." Natalie looked at Kay. "Does she hear herself?" "She hears everything," Kay said. "That's different from listening." The north block came out in sections. Deirdre and Luis cut the 6 marked trees while Evelyn operated the winch from the tractor. The first root mass broke free with a wet sound, exposing soil the color of coffee grounds. Evelyn had expected satisfaction. Instead, she saw the empty space where Frank used to lean his ladder. Deirdre stood beside the hole. "Want a minute?" "For what?" "To hate me. I agreed to 6. Agreement doesn't prevent hatred." Evelyn shut off the tractor. Frank grafted that one. "Good fruit, sour enough to turn your ears inward. Then we'll graft from a better tree. You don't replace history by improving it. No. You make the next tree useful." Evelyn looked at her. "Write down the scion varieties we should consider," she said. "Bring me choices." Deirdre did not smile until she turned away. In the farm office that afternoon, Evelyn gave her authority to order soil tests and prepare the replacement plan within a set budget. Deirdre read the page twice. "What happens if the tests show we need more?" she asked. "You ask. And if you don't answer, you call Luis. And if he doesn't answer, you make the least expensive reversible decision." Deirdre underlined reversible. "I can work with that." The weekend of the supper gathered too much around itself. Natalie had booked a rehearsal dinner in the packing shed Friday night and a wedding Saturday. The Saturday ceremony was planned for the lower orchard field, with the reception inside the shed. Natalie had accepted the rehearsal booking after the May cancellation, telling Evelyn the added income would cover Kay's outstanding event deposits and one payment on the bathroom work. "You'll have 12 hours to turn the room around," Evelyn said. 14. "You sleep in January." By Wednesday, weather reports began using the phrase slow-moving front. Thursday brought wind from the east, and a line of dark cloud pressed against the mountains. Deirdre moved the farm supper tables onto the sorting porch before the first drops fell. Kay stacked labeled crates there: bowls, linens, serving boards, chafing fuel, glass jars, and 3 boxes marked, "Do not move." Natalie's rehearsal dinner arrived under umbrellas Friday evening. 46 adults filled the packing shed with wet coats, wine, and enough perfume to overpower the pork loin. Evelyn stayed away except to check the ditch near the parking field. Through the shed windows, she saw Natalie moving between tables, lighting candles that kept going out when the door opened. At 11:30, the music stopped. At midnight, rental staff began clearing dishes. At 1:15, Natalie knocked on the farmhouse door. Evelyn came downstairs in her robe. She opened the door and found her daughter soaked through, though she had an umbrella hanging from one hand. "What happened?" "Nothing. I need coffee. Your house is closer. Your coffee is better." Natalie entered without waiting, then stopped as if remembering she no longer had the right. Evelyn closed the door behind her. While coffee brewed, Natalie sat at the kitchen table with both palms wrapped around the empty mug. Mascara had darkened beneath her eyes. "The field is gone," she said. "What do you mean gone?" "Standing water. The ceremony aisle is mud. The tent company won't put stakes in it. You can hold the ceremony in the shed. The reception tables will already be set. Put the chairs in rows between them. The bride doesn't want to get married between dinner tables. Most marriages spend plenty of time there." "Mom, sorting porch?" Natalie looked into the empty mug. Evelyn understood before she answered. "What did you promise?" "A covered orchard ceremony. The porch is not an orchard. It faces one." "What did you promise?" "I told Lila we had a covered backup space." "Did you tell her it was the sorting porch?" "Yes." Evelyn turned off the coffee maker before it finished. "The porch is full. We can clear it in the morning. Kay's things are there. The tables are there. The supper isn't until Sunday night. Sunday afternoon. Fine. We put everything in the fruit handling room and move it back after the wedding. The fruit room floor is being repaired, only the south end, which leaves half the space. We stack carefully. We? I will hire people. At 1 in the morning, I'll call the rental crew at 6, and pay emergency hours? Yes. From which deposit? Natalie's face hardened. I came here to ask about space, not have you audit me. You didn't come to ask. You already promised it. Rain struck the kitchen windows in sheets. Natalie stood and walked to the sink. There is no other covered place that faces the orchard. The shed. That is not what they booked. Neither is the sorting porch. It is not part of your venue. It is a concrete slab with a roof. It is holding an event I am responsible for. 24 hours later. And if this rain continues, if the porch gets soaked during the wedding, if their decorations stay up until Sunday morning, if your rental crew is late, I'll handle it. You handled the farmhouse. Natalie gripped the sink edge. Evelyn wished the sentence back. It remained where she had put it. Everything comes back to that door, Natalie said. It was my door, I know. You keep saying you know, and then you decide the next space belongs to you because you need it. I am trying to keep a wedding from falling apart. You are trying to make your promise my problem. A woman is supposed to get married tomorrow. An adult woman with an indoor reception room. She paid me for a ceremony that doesn't feel like a compromise, then returned part of her money. Natalie laughed once, without humor. You think every problem ends with returning money? No, I think sometimes money belongs to the person you disappointed. That would be clean, wouldn't it? Separate account, separate building, separate mistake. Evelyn poured the unfinished coffee. It came out weak. The porch is not available, she said. Natalie stared at her. No. You would let me disappoint 40 people to protect 32 empty chairs. I would let you tell the truth and solve the problem you made. I am solving it by moving Kay's work. I said I'd hire people. You didn't ask Kay, I will. At 1:30 in the morning, Natalie picked up her coat. Drink the coffee, Evelyn said. I don't want it. You came for it. I came because I thought you might help. You came because you thought I would give in. Natalie opened the mudroom door. Wind drove rain across the threshold. At least the cottage was dry, she said, and stepped into the storm. Evelyn shut the door against the wind. Coffee sat in the 2 mugs, pale and untouched. At 6:45, she found Natalie in the packing shed, asleep upright in a chair. Half the tables from the rehearsal dinner had been cleared. The others were covered in damp linens and abandoned glasses. One acrylic chandelier flickered. Natalie woke when Evelyn switched on the work lights. You can't sleep here, Evelyn said. I just did. Did you call the bride? Not yet. Call her. I need a plan first. The ceremony goes here. Chairs in the center, reception tables around the walls. After the vows, guests go to cocktails, and you reset the center. With what staff? The staff you hired. Their catering and parking, then hire more. Everybody I know is already working. Evelyn looked around the room. 14 hours had become 7. Rain hammered the metal roof. Natalie stood, smoothing her wrinkled black pants. If I can't use the porch, I need 6 people for a 40-minute room flip. Then ask 6 people. Who? That is the part you keep skipping. Natalie looked away. Evelyn thought of Kay's invoice, Luis's yellow pad, Deirdre's underlined word. She thought of all the years she had said, I've got him, when what she meant was, somebody help me without making me say it. Ask Kay, she said. Ask Luis. Ask Deirdre. Ask me. You just said no. To the porch, and if they say no, then you will finally have an answer that belongs to them. Natalie's telephone was already in her hand. At 7, she called Kay first. Evelyn heard only Natalie's side. I need help, she said. Then, after a pause, yes, I know what time it is. Another pause. Yes, paid. Natalie closed her eyes. Whatever your emergency rate is. When the call ended, she wrote a number in her binder. Kay? Evelyn asked. She'll come at 11. Luis is already here. I'll ask him after I call Lila. Natalie dialed the bride. This time, when she spoke, her voice held no brightening trick, no polished venue language. The field flooded, she said. I promised you a backup space I don't have the right to use. I'm sorry. Evelyn stood beneath the acrylic chandeliers and listened as her daughter began telling the truth. Lila did not cry, shout, or threaten to sue. She became very quiet. How many people fit inside for the ceremony? She asked. All 48, Natalie said. It will be tighter than the layout we planned. And the reception? We'll set the dinner tables around the perimeter before guests arrive. After the ceremony, we'll move everyone to the cocktail stations at the far end and reset the center. In 40 minutes? That's the plan. The backup space you showed me on the map was the covered porch. I should not have shown it without confirming access. Evelyn watched Natalie's free hand tighten around the binder. I can refund the outdoor ceremony portion, Natalie continued, and the additional floral installation if the florist can't adapt it. I'll cover the extra labor for the room change. Lila asked to call back after speaking with her fiancé, Cameron. When the line disconnected, Natalie lowered the phone. She hates me. She hates the rain. She can hate two things. Natalie called the florist next, then the rental company, the caterer, the bartender, and the photographer. With each conversation, the plan became less impossible and more expensive. Luis came in from checking storm drains at 7:30. Water streamed from the brim of his hat. Natalie met him beside the shed door. I need to ask you something, she said. Luis's eyebrows rose. Paid work for the venue. Separate hours. I need help moving chairs and flipping the room between the ceremony and reception. What time? 3 until 6, maybe 7. I need to clear branches after the wind drops. Can Mateo handle the east rows? He can handle what he can see, hard in this rain. If 3 is too early, 4. Luis removed his gloves one finger at a time. $30 an hour. Natalie blinked. The farm paid less. Emergency event work, he said. Fine. 4 to 7. I leave at 7 even if people are sitting on the floor. Fine. Food? Yes. Good food. Natalie looked toward Evelyn. Kay's coming, Evelyn said. Luis nodded. 4 o'clock. He went back into the rain. Deirdre agreed to work 3 hours after she and Mateo finished clearing the lane. She named the same rate as Luis without hesitation. You discussed this, Natalie said. We had 7 minutes, Deirdre replied. Luis is efficient. Natalie wrote it down. Then she turned to Evelyn. Evelyn waited. I need someone who knows where everything is, Natalie said. That has never been a paid position here. It is today. What would I do? Keep the room flip list. Make sure nobody carries dinner tables through the west doors because the threshold is uneven. Stop the rental crew from putting wet chairs against the plaster wall. Handle anything I forget. That last item requires overtime. Will you help me? There was no mention of family, inheritance, Frank, or what the farm would someday become. Yes, Evelyn said. Natalie looked at her binder. 30 an hour, 20. You're undercutting the others. I own the room. You are labor. The words sounded different from her daughter. 30, Evelyn said. Put it on the invoice. Kay arrived at 11, carrying 2 grocery bags and wearing yellow rubber boots beneath black catering trousers. I brought eggs, she announced. For the wedding? Natalie asked. For us. Nobody saves a wedding while hungry. She took one look at the proposed room plan and moved the cocktail stations to the rear loading area, where a wide awning protected the doors. She sent Natalie to find pipe and drape panels, told the florist to build one installation that could move intact, and assigned Evelyn to make signs directing guests between spaces. I have professional signs, Natalie said. Do they say ceremony is indoors? No. Then today we use a marker. At noon, Lila called back. We're going forward, she said. But I want the revised timeline in writing, and I want the ceremony refund. Yes, Natalie said. And I don't want guests seeing people move dinner tables while we take photographs. They won't. Can you promise that? Natalie looked around the shed. Kay was dragging a service table 6 feet to the left. Deirdre stood on a ladder, fastening fabric to a beam. Luis had not yet arrived. Half the chairs were still wet in the rental truck. I can promise we'll do everything possible, Natalie said. The old version of Natalie would have said yes. Lila exhaled. All right. At 1, the rain worsened. Water rushed through the ditch beside the lower field, carrying leaves, 1 paper cup, and a white plastic chair cover. The ceremony field shone like a pond. Evelyn stood on the packing shed porch and looked toward the sorting building. Its metal roof held firm. Kay's crates and the supper tables remained dry beneath it. For one weak moment, Evelyn wondered whether she had been wrong. They could have cleared the porch. They could have stacked the supper supplies in the narrow half of the fruit room, taken the chance, solved everything with one exhausted push. Then she remembered Natalie telling Lila the porch was available before anyone else had been given a choice. Saying no had forced the true cost into view. It had also wounded her daughter when she was already frightened. Both things could be true. Evelyn was getting tired of truths that traveled in pairs. By 2, the long packing shed had been divided, without looking divided. Rows of white chairs faced the movable floral arch. Dinner tables stood dressed along the outer walls, their place settings covered with linen cloths until after the ceremony. The bar waited behind pipe and drape panels at the far end. Natalie moved through it all with damp hair and a roll of tape around her wrist. She knew where the light fell, how far a chair should sit from an aisle, and which ugly cord could be hidden by a basket of greenery. When one chandelier flickered, she climbed a ladder before Curtis could be reached. "Get down!" Evelyn called. "I know what's wrong." That sentence killed several Mercers. Natalie adjusted the bulb, and the chandelier steadied. Acrylic, hard to kill. She smiled down. Evelyn smiled back before remembering they were in the middle of a disaster. At 2:30, the wedding party arrived. The cottage became the dressing space, warm and crowded with garment bags, cosmetics, and steaming mugs. Lila came to inspect the shed in a satin robe under her raincoat. She stood inside the west doors and looked at the chairs. "It's smaller," she said. "Yes," Natalie replied. The aisle was supposed to be longer. Yes. Lila looked toward the floral arch. The florist had used branches from storm-fallen maple limbs, white roses, and late orchard leaves that flashed bronze under the lights. "It's beautiful," she said reluctantly. Natalie did not seize the compliment. "The floor will be dry before guests arrive," she said. "We're putting extra mats at both entrances." Lila touched the back of one chair. "Cameron says the weather will make a good story later." "Cameron isn't wearing satin near mud," Kay said as she passed with a tray. Lila laughed. Some of the tension left her face. At 3:15, guests began coming through the gate. Their headlights swept across Avery Farm before turning toward signs bearing Mercer Farm Weddings. Evelyn stood near the entrance with an umbrella, directing cars away from the flooded field. A man in a navy suit rolled down his window. "Is the ceremony outside?" "Not unless the bride has offended someone." He looked at the rain and nodded. "Fair." By 4, every seat was filled. Water drummed against the metal roof, hard enough to sound like applause before anything had happened. Cameron entered with his brother and took his place beneath the floral arch. He was a large, calm man whose hands shook when the music began. Lila walked down the shortened aisle without looking at the dinner tables. The room became quiet except for rain. Evelyn stood at the rear beside Natalie. Her daughter held the room flip list in one hand, though she did not look at it. When Lila and Cameron exchanged vows, Natalie's shoulders lowered for the first time all day. The ceremony lasted 22 minutes. The photographer took the couple toward the cottage porch. Kay opened the rear panels, revealing drinks and hot appetizers. Guests moved beneath the loading awning, while the rain eased to a steady whisper. 40 minutes, Natalie said. Luis and Deirdre started with the front rows. Mateo stacked chairs onto rolling racks. The rental crew uncovered the dinner tables. Kay directed servers through the east door. Evelyn stood in the center with the list. "Table 7 is missing 2 chairs, she called. "Coming," Luis said. "Not through the west door, I know." "Then why are you going that way?" "To get the chairs. The extras are by the office. Those are wet. They're dry now. Then put that on the list." At 12 minutes, the floral arch had moved behind the head table. At 20, the center tables were in place. At 27, Evelyn caught one of the linen cloths under her shoe and nearly fell. Deirdre took her elbow. "I'm fine. You're limping. I was limping when you met me. Sit for 5 minutes. We have 13. You can direct from a chair. I can direct from the floor if necessary." Deirdre looked at her with the same expression she used for diseased bark. Evelyn sat. At 36 minutes, Natalie opened the rear panels. Guests re-entered to candlelight, music, and a room that no longer resembled the ceremony they had left. The acrylic chandeliers cast warm gold over the tables. Rain streaked the windows behind the floral arch. Lila stopped in the doorway. "Oh," she said. It was only one word. Natalie heard everything inside it. Dinner began on time. Evelyn ate with the workers in the farm office, balancing a plate on the edge of Natalie's desk. Kay had sent cider-braised pork, roasted carrots, rolls, and a bowl of mashed potatoes large enough to bathe in. Luis checked his watch at 7. "I am leaving." "The cake hasn't been cut," Natalie said. "Cake is not my emergency." She paid him before he put on his coat. Deirdre submitted her hours on the new sheet and left with Mateo. Kay stayed because she was catering, not because the family needed rescuing. At 9, Cameron found Natalie near the bar. "I know today wasn't what we planned," he said. Natalie braced herself. "It was better than getting married in a tent that landed in Maryland." Lila joined him, holding her shoes in one hand. "I'm still taking the refund?" "You should," Natalie said. "But the room was beautiful. Thank you. And the porch would have been freezing." Natalie glanced toward Evelyn, who was collecting abandoned glasses. "Yes," she said. "It would have." The final guests left before midnight. Rental staff stacked chairs, but left the tables for morning pickup. The shed smelled of extinguished candles, wet coats, and cake. Evelyn sat on the edge of the stage, rubbing her knee. Natalie came over carrying 2 envelopes. "Your emergency pay," she said. Evelyn accepted hers. "You asked," she said. Natalie sat beside her. "I did," and they answered. "They charged me like surgeons. You were bleeding." Natalie laughed softly. After a moment, she leaned her shoulder against Evelyn's. Neither apologized. Outside, the rain had stopped. Water still dripped from the roof, but the storm was moving east. Across the yard, the sorting porch remained full of Sunday's tables and Kay's labeled crates. Nothing had been displaced. Nothing had been taken because one person's emergency mattered more. Evelyn looked at her daughter's exhausted face. "You solved it," she said. "We solved it." This time, Evelyn let the words stand. They sat until Kay pushed through the rear door carrying a trash bag. "If this is reconciliation," she said, "reconcile while collecting glassware." Natalie lifted her head from Evelyn's shoulder. "You ruin everything." "I keep events on schedule." They worked another hour. Evelyn gathered candles from the tables, while Natalie checked rental counts and Kay wrapped leftover food. The quiet after a wedding had its own kind of mess. Lipstick on glasses, wilted flowers, a man's tie hanging from a chair, one high-heeled shoe with no sign of its owner. At 1:30, Kay drove home. Natalie locked the packing shed and handed Evelyn the blue-taped bathroom key. "You keep it," she said. "It's yours." "I know. Keep it until tomorrow." The old suspicion did not come. Evelyn put the key on her labeled ring. By 7, her knee had stiffened enough that she had to sit on the side of the bed before standing. She dressed in the dark, swallowed 2 pain relievers, and went downstairs sideways. Natalie was asleep at the kitchen table. Her hair was still pinned from the wedding, though half the pins had fallen loose. A mug sat near her hand. She had let herself in when Evelyn left the mudroom unlocked for Deirdre. For a moment, the sight made Evelyn angry. The house had not become common ground because they survived one storm. Then Natalie stirred and lifted her face from her arms. "I came to make coffee," she said. "You made sleep." The machine was loud. "You've been operating it since you were 12. I lost focus." Evelyn filled the reservoir. "Go to the cottage. Sleep 2 hours. We have the supper. You have set up at 2. Tables come off the porch at 10. Rental crew. They're collecting the wedding tables, not setting ours. I can supervise." Natalie looked at her knee. "Do not," Evelyn said. "I didn't say anything. You looked. I have eyes. They're rude." Natalie rubbed yesterday's mascara from beneath them. "Sit down. I just got up. Then practice." Evelyn remained standing until the coffee maker finished. After pouring both mugs, she sat because choosing to sit felt different from being told. Natalie wrapped her hands around the coffee. "Thank you for yesterday," she said. "You paid me. That wasn't what I meant." "I know. Then say you're welcome. You're welcome." They drank in silence. At 9, Kay arrived wearing clean rubber boots and carrying a clipboard. "Porch floor is dry," she announced. "Orchard is a swamp. We're staying covered. The tickets say orchard supper," Evelyn said. "The supper is at an orchard. It does not promise dining inside a tree." Deirdre came in behind her with a roll of craft paper and a stack of field photographs. She had converted the orchard walk into a seated talk about removing and replacing old trees. "You made slides?" Evelyn asked. "Pictures? You planning to lecture people over soup? Before soup? I'm not reckless." Louise arrived with Celia, who brought 2 pans of cornbread and refused payment because she was attending as a guest. Kay accepted the cornbread only after adding 2 supper tickets to the guest list without charge. Celia declared this a trade, which satisfied everybody. By 10, the porch had become a workplace. Natalie directed the rental crew to place the repaired wood tables end to end. The uneven boards formed one long surface with small gaps where the tables met. She covered none of them. Instead, she ran narrow linen strips across the joins and put jars of rosemary above each brace. Making repairs look intentional? Evelyn asked. Making them look honest. Kay claimed the far end for service. Deirdre hung photographs along the fruit room wall. Louise strung the lamps Natalie had rented, using padded clips that did not pierce wood or trees. Evelyn carried a crate of plates from the packing shed. Halfway across the yard, pain shot from her knee into her hip. The crate tilted. Deirdre took it before anything fell. "I have it," Evelyn said. "I know. Give it to me. I can carry plates. You can carry half. I am not dividing a crate of plates so you feel useful. I'm already useful." Natalie came down the packing shed steps with napkins over one arm. "What happened?" "Nothing," Evelyn said. "Her knee," Deirdre said. "Traitor. You pay me to report orchard problems. I am not an orchard problem. You're standing in one." Natalie looked at the distance between the shed and porch. "We need someone stationed at the table to check settings. That is not a job. 32 plates, forks, knives, spoons, water glasses, cider glasses, and napkins. Count them." "I can count while walking." "Not at the same time, apparently." Evelyn glared at both women. Kay called from the porch. "If she carries one more thing, I'm putting her in charge of peeling onions." Evelyn sat at the end of the long table and counted. The work moved without her hands on every piece. That was the part she disliked. It was also the part that made the supper possible. Deirdre arranged the field photographs in an order Evelyn would not have chosen. Louise placed lights slightly lower than Natalie wanted. Kay changed the soup garnish because the herbs had wilted. Natalie folded napkins with the seams showing, after deciding perfection looked too formal. Nothing collapsed. At 4:30, Marianne arrived in a green wool coat and leaned on her cane while studying the gate. "Well," she said, "Mama would have gone bigger. She once painted her kitchen orange. She had vision. She had cataracts." Marianne looked at Evelyn's knee. "You walk like Daddy." "I do not." He also denied it. Marianne took her arm, not to support her, but to make it impossible for Evelyn to move quickly without dragging another woman. Guests began arriving before 5. Nora Dillard's bridge group claimed the center of the table and immediately requested more cider. The couple from Harrisonburg asked Deirdre detailed questions about rootstock. Kay's former husband appeared with a woman Evelyn did not know. Kay looked at him once, handed him a bowl, and seated him beside Louise, who could silence most men through eyebrows alone. The lamps came on as dusk settled. Their light reflected in the wet yard and warmed the rough boards beneath the porch roof. Beyond them, the orchard stood dark and dripping. Evelyn had planned a welcome speech. Natalie had printed it in 14-point type and placed it beside her plate. When everyone was seated, Evelyn stood, looked at the page, and could not find the beginning. 32 faces turned toward her. She folded the paper. "This sign out front says Avery Farm," she said. "That's my family name, but names are only useful when they tell the truth about the work under them." Natalie stood near the service end, holding a pitcher. Evelyn continued. "Kay Whitcomb cooked your supper. Natalie Mercer made the room look as if we meant for rain all along. Deirdre Shaw is helping us decide what comes next in the orchard. Luis Ortega has kept these trees alive through people who gave him bad instructions, including me. Mateo and Jesse cleared the lane this morning. Celia brought cornbread and refused to behave like a businesswoman." Celia raised one hand. "I charge 2 tickets. Laughter moved along the table. "This place has had one family name over it at a time," Evelyn said. "The work never did." She sat before her voice changed. Kay served roasted squash soup without apples. The main course included cider-braised pork, white beans with greens, and baked apples filled with sausage and herbs. Dessert was chocolate chess pie, which pleased Kay because it confused everyone expecting apples. Conversation grew louder as plates emptied. Evelyn watched Natalie move between the table and service station. She did not work like Frank. He had taken charge by making himself the center of every problem. Natalie took charge by noticing what was missing: a dry napkin, another water pitcher, a chair moved away from a draft. Near the end of supper, Nora asked loudly enough for half the table to hear, "Why didn't you put Avery on the farm years ago?" Evelyn looked toward Natalie. "Wasn't ready," she said. "For what?" "To see it." Nora accepted that answer only because Kay placed pie in front of her. The last guest left after 9. Marianne kissed Evelyn, hugged Natalie longer, and whispered something that made Natalie roll her eyes. Louise and Celia drove out behind her. Deirdre stacked her photographs and promised to bring the soil test results Tuesday. Kay counted bowls twice. "None missing," she said. "I mistrust success." "You were paid," Evelyn replied. "That makes it worse. Now I have standards." After Kay left, Evelyn and Natalie carried the final glasses into the fruit room. The porch lamp swayed in the cold breeze. "You named everybody," Natalie said. "Not everybody. I forgot the rental crew. You named me. You did the work." Natalie wiped the table with a damp cloth. "You used my last name. It is your name. For now?" Evelyn heard Warren's joke in the question. "For as long as you want it." They turned off the lamps and walked toward the gate. Mud pulled at their shoes, but the sky had cleared. The new sign shone cream in the headlights from the parking area. Natalie stopped beneath it. "What did you write on the back?" Evelyn looked up. "How did you know I wrote anything?" "I saw pencil when I checked the bracket. It says Mercer Farm, and the years the old sign was up." Natalie walked around to the roadside and back again, as if the angle might make the hidden words visible. "You memorialized it. I recorded it. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't do it for you." Natalie nodded. Her face in the greenish porch light looked both older and more like the girl Evelyn remembered. "I lied about the locks," she said. "You said contractors needed controlled access." "That was true, but it wasn't why." Evelyn waited. Natalie put both hands in her coat pockets. "I thought you might sell. I told you I wasn't selling. You also talked about cutting back. You said you were tired. Marianne mentioned a friend of hers near Asheville, and for 2 weeks you kept talking about how pretty the mountains were." "I live in mountains. Different mountains." Evelyn almost laughed, then saw Natalie's face. "I thought you might meet somebody," Natalie continued, "or decide you wanted a clean little house in town, or give Louise part of the orchard because Dad always said he deserved it. Every time you talked about the future, it sounded like there was less room for me, so you moved me before I could move you. I made the cottage nice because I needed to believe I was helping. The honesty of it made the cold feel sharper." "You thought the farm would prove something," Evelyn said, "that I mattered enough to keep. You mattered before the farm." "Did I?" There were questions that could not be answered by insisting harder. Evelyn looked toward the farmhouse. "I loved your father." "I know. I also disappeared inside the way we lived. Both are true." Natalie lowered her eyes. "He thanked me," Evelyn said. "He brought me coffee. He rubbed my hands when canning made them ache. But he believed the farm was his burden and my nature. Everyone did. I helped them believe it because being needed felt close enough to being seen. I saw you. You saw me doing things. That was all you let me see." The answer struck cleanly because it was partly true. Evelyn had hidden exhaustion from Natalie, then resented her for not recognizing it. She had declined help and called herself abandoned. Frank was not the only person who made love prove itself through labor. "You don't get this place because you suffered for it," Evelyn said, "and you don't have to suffer to belong. Then what do I get? A life you choose. That sounds like nothing." It sounded like nothing to me for years. Natalie looked up at the Avery letters. "I changed the locks because I wanted one decision you couldn't undo," she said. "And I changed the gate because I wanted my name on one thing before I was gone." They stood beneath the 2 decisions, one hidden in Evelyn's pocket and one suspended above them. "If belonging here means I have to keep you trapped," Natalie said, "I don't want it." Evelyn believed she meant it. That did not yet tell either of them what came next. "What do you want?" Evelyn asked. Natalie looked at the farmhouse, then the packing shed. "I want the venue," she said. "Not because it gives me the farm, because I'm good at it. You are. I want to know I can keep operating if I do what we agree. That's reasonable. And I want you to stop using someday as a weapon whenever you're angry." Evelyn considered denying it. She had not threatened to leave the farm elsewhere. She had simply allowed the possibility to stand between them because uncertainty made Natalie easier to control. "That's reasonable too," she said. "I don't need you to promise me the property." The sentence cost Natalie something. Evelyn heard it. "I don't know what I'll do with it," she said. "I know." "No, you don't. Neither do I. That needs to be allowed." Natalie nodded. Evelyn looked up at the gate. but I can promise not to make you build a business on guesses. We'll agree on what you use, what it costs, and how long the agreement lasts. It won't depend on whether we're getting along, or whether I come to Thanksgiving. You're still coming to Thanksgiving, see? Weapon. That was not a weapon, that was a menu. Natalie laughed quietly. They walked back toward the farmhouse. At the mudroom door, Natalie stopped and waited for Evelyn to unlock it. You can come in, Evelyn said. You locked it. That is generally what doors are for. Natalie followed her into the kitchen. They heated leftover soup and ate at the table without solving anything else. Evelyn did not offer a house key. Natalie did not ask. The second lodging couple canceled in December. Natalie took the call in the packing shed office, refunded what she owed, and sat with the empty calendar afterward. Evelyn found her there at dusk, surrounded by fabric samples and invoices. Do you need anything? Evelyn asked. A wedding with low expectations. I meant now. No. Evelyn left her alone. 2 days later, Natalie accepted an outside job decorating a hotel ballroom in Roanoke. Then another. The work was less romantic than the farm photographs, conference backdrops, retirement dinners, one awards luncheon with a malfunctioning fog machine, but it paid promptly. She used the money to finish a proper prep kitchen at the rear of the packing shed. When the new sink was installed, she invited Evelyn to inspect it. Faucet's too tall, Evelyn said. It fits stock pots. It'll splash. It doesn't. Natalie turned it on. Water struck the deep basin without spilling. Evelyn nodded. Acceptable. Thank you for your blessing. She stopped using the farmhouse kitchen for tastings. The revised lodging page offered the cottage for 2 adults and listed nearby inns for everyone else. Evelyn received notice before every booking. The first time strangers stayed in the cottage, she lay awake in the farmhouse wondering whether they were using the good towels. The next morning, the towels remained on their rack because the guests had brought their own. People were peculiar everywhere. Avery Farm's first supper made a modest profit after every worker, ingredient, rented lamp, and half bottle of dish soap was counted. Evelyn stared at the final number. That's all? She asked Kay. That is what profit looks like when it isn't stolen from labor. It looked larger in my imagination. Imagination works free. They scheduled 4 suppers for the following year, instead of 12. Kay refused to call them a series. Evelyn refused to call them curated. Natalie listed them online as seasonal dinners and tickets sold without adjectives. The North Block taught harder lessons. Soil tests confirmed Deirdre's concerns. Replanting half would leave too many poorly spaced trees and preserve drainage problems Frank had worked around for decades. We should take 12, Deirdre said. Evelyn stood among the bare trunks in January, cold working through her gloves. The 6 remaining wine saps looked less like history without their neighbors and more like tired trees. 12, she said. Louise watched her. That's a decision. Don't enjoy it. I enjoy very little in January. They removed the rest. Evelyn sold the North tractor after it stalled twice and left Mateo stranded near the pond. The sale brought less than she wanted and more than the machine deserved. She rented heavier equipment for removal days instead of owning it year-round. Frank would have objected to both choices. Evelyn sometimes heard his objections so clearly that she answered aloud. Deirdre learned not to ask who she was talking to. With fewer old trees and a clearer work schedule, the orchard did not require miracles. It required planning. Luis became field supervisor in title as well as fact. Deirdre took 25 hours a week by spring, splitting time between the orchard and nursery until Avery Farm could offer more. Her replacement plan included 2 wine sap grafts. I thought you hated them, Evelyn said. I respect their history. You called them poor producers. They are. You called the fruit ugly. It is. Then why plant 2? Deirdre shrugged. Useful isn't always yield. Evelyn signed the order. Separating the farm and venue did not make mother and daughter agreeable. They argued over parking gravel, refrigerator space, late fees, flower prices, and whether folding chairs should be stored seat up or seat down. Natalie still expanded ideas while describing them. Evelyn still said maybe when she meant no. Now Deirdre would ask, is that a decision? And Kay would ask, who is paying? Luis would ask both. The questions became part of the place. In March, Evelyn arrived at the packing shed to find 2 venue workers standing idle because Natalie had forgotten to leave the supply room key. I can unlock it, Evelyn said. One worker shook his head. Ms. Mercer said not to ask anyone else. Evelyn called Natalie. "I'm 20 minutes away," Natalie said. "They're being paid to wait. I have the key. I know. You trust me in your supply room. I do, but it's my mistake." Evelyn unlocked it anyway, then billed the venue for 5 minutes of key service. Natalie paid, deducting 19 cents. In May, Evelyn spent another 4 nights with Marianne, this time because Marianne wanted company on a trip to Asheville and refused to navigate mountain roads alone. Before leaving, Evelyn met Natalie beside the farm stand. "I need you to check the upstairs windows if it storms," she said. "I can check from outside. The west sash sticks. It may look closed when it isn't. I'll call you. You'll be in the yard and I'll be 3 hours away." Natalie waited. Evelyn held out a new silver key. A white label was folded around its head. "Farmhouse, ask first." Natalie read it twice. "This is a very long label. You have poor boundaries. You have poor labeling technique. Do you want it?" Natalie closed her fingers around the key. Yes. It stayed on her ring for 3 days without being used. On the 4th, a storm blew open the west sash. Natalie called. Evelyn told her to go inside. When Evelyn returned from Asheville, the window was latched, the kitchen untouched, and the key lay on the table. "You can keep it," Evelyn said later. Natalie looked surprised. "For emergencies? For asking first?" She put it back on her ring. By the next autumn, the replacement trees in the north block stood no higher than Evelyn's shoulder. Their thin trunks required stakes, guards, and faith. Deirdre checked them after wind. Louise complained about the cost of guards, then straightened any that leaned. Mercer Farm weddings booked fewer events than Natalie had projected, and more than she had feared. The prep kitchen passed Kay's inspection, which she delivered by saying, "I can work here without swearing at the plumbing." Michelle Boone and David Hanley held their June wedding in the packing shed. Their relatives stayed at 2 inns and the cottage. Michelle got ready upstairs in the shed's new dressing room, where the windows had beautiful natural light because Natalie had installed them instead of taking Evelyn's. No one slept in the farmhouse. Evelyn attended wearing shoes Deirdre called impractical. Natalie seated her at a table near the dance floor and brought her cake before the slices became thin. The next harvest supper sold out in 2 days. Natalie planned the setup around her own Friday event and left Saturday free. Kay ordered ingredients only after receiving her deposit. Deirdre expanded the orchard talk to include the new block. Louise again declined to have his name printed, though Evelyn put it on the menu anyway. On the afternoon of the supper, Natalie came through the gate carrying one end of a long object wrapped in moving blankets. Warren Pike carried the other. "What is that?" Evelyn asked. Natalie looked at her. "Something that belongs in the shed." They set it on 2 tables and removed the blankets. Mercer Family Farm. Frank's black letters had been cleaned but not repainted. The imperfect F remained. Warren had repaired the split near one bracket and sealed the wood so rain and damp could no longer reach it. Evelyn ran her fingertips over the M. "You restored it. I preserved it," Natalie said. "There's a difference. Where do you want it?" "Inside, above the doors to the event room, if that's all right." "You don't want it on the gate?" Natalie looked toward the cream board at the road. "No." Warren and Louise mounted the old sign inside the packing shed. It hung above the wide entrance, visible whenever the doors opened, but protected from weather. Frank's name now marked the building Natalie had made useful, not the entire life Evelyn had made there. Before guests arrived, Evelyn stood beneath it with Natalie. "He would complain it's not level," Evelyn said. "It is level." He would still complain. "I know." Evelyn touched the repaired edge. "Thank you." Natalie adjusted a lamp on the nearest table. "Don't make it emotional." Warren charged enough. Outside, Avery Farm glowed above the gate. The supper unfolded without rain. One long table stood at the orchard edge, set with worn wood, rosemary jars, and Natalie's small lamps. Kay served squash soup, pork, greens, and chocolate pie. Marianne came without her cane. Nora brought the same bridge group and asked about cider before removing her coat. Evelyn did not give a speech. The work had names now. They were printed on the menu. After the last guest left, everyone helped clear the table. Kay took her knives. Deirdre stacked the field photographs. Louise and Celia drove away with leftover pie. The packing shed doors closed beneath Frank's restored sign. Evelyn and Natalie walked to the gate together. The night smelled of cold leaves and wood smoke. Behind them, the farmhouse windows were dark. The cottage porch light glowed for two guests. The young wine sap stood tied against the wind. Natalie rested one hand on the gate. "Does Avery Farm feel like home yet?" she asked. Evelyn heard Frank's name settling safely inside the shed. She felt the farmhouse key in her pocket and knew its twin rested on Natalie's ring. Beyond the gate were people who had been paid, thanked, trusted, and asked. She closed the gate beside her daughter. "It does now," she said,